I'm ready, go ahead.
All right. Hello, everybody. Today is Wednesday, October 25th, Halloween season. I'm wearing my Halloween earrings. And we are meeting. This is Finance and Facilities. And although we're set up for remote attendance, we don't have anyone remotely attending right now. So I'm not going to read that whole thing. We're starting a little early this evening because we have a whole bunch of policy work to do. And we're going to review how policy work actually gets done. Bless you. And actually, as I look around the room, and I'm going to do a roll call, but I want to, so Dr. Trochuk, are you here?
Here.
I thought Dr. Flaherty was going to be here.
She'll be here in a bit, but she's not coming. She didn't come for the 6 o'clock start time. She'll be
Okay,
here
I
for
thought she
later.
told me she was going to because she wanted to kind of learn the policy ropes.
Oh,
But
oh.
that's okay. I'm just, again, I'm
I know
a
she'll
little
be here soon.
disheveled
Yeah.
this evening. So, all right. So on our F&F committee, on the school committee, we have Dr. Kenan Mackenzie DeFranza.
Here.
We have Miss Kimberly Coelho.
Here.
As citizen reps, we have Miss DeGeneva.
Here.
We have Mr., who's really a doctor but doesn't call himself a doctor, Manzo.
I'm here and I'm shoveled.
Well, good thing. We have our business operations, finance and business. What is your real title?
Director of Finance and Operations.
I was close. Jean Sherburne.
Here.
And we have and we have BevCam. Thank you, BevCam. And we have nobody else in the audience or online. Now, hopefully my Zoom operator will be here soon. Ms. DeGeneva, can you see the screen of the machine running the Zoom meeting?
Yes.
So, hold on a minute. Let me turn it. Yeah. If you just see somebody up top trying to get in, will you admit them? Okay. Thank you. If anybody wants to join the Zoom, I am expecting City Councilor Julie Flowers to join remotely. She's not a voter, so we don't need to do a roll call vote. All right, so I'll try to breathe. Mr. Oh, that's right, here. Do you remember last time I asked you to
I
do
managed
that?
to mess that up, but
So what happened is, just so everybody knows.
You
that
be microphoning.
Our stenographer is remote, so that's why we're checking those off. So if somebody can help Lorinda with that, just checking off who's here and the votes.
I need a pen.
All right, so we have a million things going on today, and here you go, you can have mine, because I was going to do it. And so I apologize, we had a tour right before this, and that's why I'm a little disheveled, as opposed to Mr. Manzo, who is shoveled. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to try to show a whole bunch of different things and kind of go over an overview of how policy, how we decide what to review for policies and how we actually review them. And Ms. Sherburne, I'm going to ask you if I can have the printed copies. In a minute, I'm going to distribute them. They're in this envelope? Okay, I'll distribute them in a minute, okay?
Are we going to approve the minutes and the other voting
That
items
is a
first?
fantastic idea that we actually show the agenda on the screen. But the first item on the agenda is that we approve the meeting minutes from our last meeting. Does somebody want to make that motion?
So moved. Second.
Fantastic. Mr. Manzo with the motion and Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza with the second. Are there any comments, questions, corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5-0, that passes. Fantastic, thank you. All right, so I want to say to everybody in this meeting, so Mr. Manzo and Ms. DeGeneva, I don't think you've heard me say this before. I have been working on a policy primer. And the point of the policy primer is supposed to be so that people who have no clue about how to do policy can have a clue about how to do policy. And we kind of realized that we had this gap where we had some members who were new and hadn't ever done any policy work. And so I cannot thank enough. Dr. Flaherty has reviewed the primer. Rachel has done a whole bunch of edits to it. I'm trying to think about who else has given some comments. So it has not yet been distributed to everyone because it's still in this kind of small little cycle. And the CISL group has been testing it to see if it actually captures everything that someone should do relative to policy. And so you guys will help me test it this evening as well. And so I'm going to thank you in advance. And what I'm really hoping is that this BevCam capture of this evening's meeting, and kind of I'm going to walk us through what we have for resources when we do policy work, combined with that policy primer, will be institutional knowledge that if I step off the curb and get hit by a bus, everybody else can just keep on keeping on. Okay, so that said, I need to find back my Zoom window here, and I'm going to share my screen. Hold, please. I brought a mouse too. I should be using my mouse. Hold, please. Really in the high disheveled category. Mr. Manzo, I might need some of your shoveling. All right, share. I'm going to share my whole messy screen. Just share the whole thing. Okay, so what I'm going to start with is we, the Beverly Public Schools, thanks to someone named Rachel A. Bell, have this massive spreadsheet, and you can see up in the corner the title. It has this really long title. It is a policy map, and it's mapping in between the national standards, almost like you could think about like when we categorize our books. There's a very standard way to categorize your books in a library, and there's a very standard way to categorize a policy, sets of policies. And then MASC has their own version of a policy manual, and then we have our own version. And so kind of as we go across in these columns, column F is this national title. Column G is whether MASC has this policy or not. And then column H is whether Beverly has this policy or not. And so let's look at a couple oddities right away. Line 7, we see that column F is empty. Do you see where my mouse is? I can annotate. We'll maybe annotate a little more, okay? So this is empty here. This means at the national level, there is no such policy. However, at MASC, if we kind of read across, MASC has a policy, lettered, I'm going to say numbered, I apologize, but ACAB, and Beverly also has one. And then we keep reading to the right, and we see what is the title in Beverly. We notice that we have some crossed out text here. So I know that this means, and hopefully I'll make a key, hopefully it's in the primer. The title of the MASC policy is sexual harassment, but the title in Beverly is just harassment. Okay, and let me erase all my things. We're about to scroll sideways in this lovely big spreadsheet, if I can be careful enough and scroll, because some of the really important information is a little further to the right. All right, actually, let me stop again here on column H. We see that on line 12, column H under Beverly has these 3 red question marks. Well, hopefully nobody's colorblind. They're red. There's 3 question marks. This is an indicator that Beverly does not yet have this policy, but we are considering whether we should. So, and because we do not yet have this policy, if you go to column I, you'll see we have a blank. We don't have a title because we don't have this thing. And then column J, for any given policy, column J tells us whether we based our policy on the MASC version of the policy or not. And let's take an example where we did not. And let's take line 15. Line 15, if we read across, says no in column J. And why do we have our own policy there? Well, because it's a mission statement, right? Look at the title. I would expect that every school committee builds their own mission statement, and they don't use MASC's generic policy for a mission statement. But there are several. If we scroll down a little further, if you look in section B, line 33, which I've highlighted on your screen, although our little voice to text is down there, so let me scroll up. Maybe you can see it a little better. We have several of our policies are based on our own charter. And so when we have a home rule charter, and because of that, there are often times when we cannot use MASC's generic policy. We have to make our own that adheres to what our charter says. Okay, so that's what column J is all about. And then if column J, I'm sorry, that was a big scroll. If column J is a no, or the word mixed, then the next column, column K, says, well, then if you're not looking at MASC to make your policy, where the heck are you getting it from? Well, you see a lot of these say we're getting it from the charter. And then column L, this is, we have doled or assigned the policies to different subcommittees. So tonight in F&F, if we scroll through this list, we'll see that there are policies assigned to F&F. And then our wonderful administrative assistant, Miss Donna, the queen of everything, is scheduling them for us. And you'll see way over here in column O, which meeting is going to get this particular policy assigned for review. And then the final last little column over here is some notes. And I would say to you this, in general, these notes are from me wearing my policy chair hat. And so we have this big spreadsheet, and it is the key to what we are reviewing and why we're reviewing or in what order. And now I'm going to hand out, and I apologize for people at home, I will put this on my screen. I'll try to find it. All right, everybody gets one.
I'm not sure. Donna just gave it to me, so
All right, let
I'm
me
not sure
look
if she
quick.
separated them or if they're all the same policies in each clip.
DH, DBC. All right, everybody gets a paper clip. I believe it's organized. We can pass one more down if Miss Abel wants one while she's running our Zoom. I'm bringing over there too. You're all set. Fantastic. And you're all-
I might as well hold you I'm pretty sure.
I've already got a set if you want to hold on in case someone else comes in.
Because you're so organized, because you're shoveled. You're not disheveled, so you had your own set. Thank you, I appreciate that. Actually, I think there's more in here if you got one, good. Okay, so, section D, the policy primer talks about what each letter stands for, what each lettered section of the manual kind of contains a certain area of policies, and section D is all about fiscal management. So if I scroll through this big policy map, our big map, we get to section D, and all of the policies for D are listed here, and then so this is kind of my base. I have this map that Miss Abel, I believe, created for us. And then MASC on occasion sends policy updates. And so what I have now, what I'm trying to share on my screen, I apologize because screen space is a little bit of an issue over here. I should have brought a second screen. I could have been dual screening, is an update that MASC sent. And they have track changes turned on. And we see all of the policies that MASC has in section D that they've made changes to. So if you look on your screen, you guys did not get in your package policy DA because there are no changes. Look up there, it's Microsoft Word track changing technology. We see nothing highlighted. So there was nothing in policy DA, as in David Andrew, that changed. But I want to give you some examples, and I'm going to scroll through this file for the people who hopefully are watching at home or are going to use this for our institutional knowledge. I'm going to scroll down to policy DH, as in David Henry, and I would like everybody to look at that physical file in your packet. All right, so DH in your packet is what I'm showing on the screen right now. And what we see in the red are the track changes that MASC has made. I also gave you in your packet DH with no markings on it. This is what our policy looks like today. In our policy manual, and I can bring that up on the screen, and maybe I'll do that in a minute. And so if I were just to give you these two, you would have to go back and forth with your own eyes and try to figure out were the changes that MASC made applicable to ours. And so the goal, as any chair, the chair of a committee is expected to look at the Beverly policy and kind of layer on top the changes that MASC is suggesting we make. And then I give all of you a file that is a base of Beverly's policy with the track changes of what MASC is suggesting we do. So on paper, you have 3 versions of this policy. One is no markups whatsoever, that's Beverly's. One has markups, that's from MASC. And then one is Beverly's with those markups layered on top.
So I only see 2 in our packets.
You only see 2 as well.
This one, and then this one.
All right, Kim has 3.
The first 3 pages.
I'm sorry, yes.
And this is part of the reason why we're doing this.
I
So
do have one question, though.
you have one question. Yes, please.
So on the first page, at the very end, the last sentence, it says the city will pay the cost of the bond. The second page, it says the municipality will pay the cost of the bond. And then the third page, it goes back to the city will pay the cost of the bond. So is it supposed to be city or municipality?
All right, so that's a very good catch. So what I apologize, I should have maybe put labels on the top so that it was better to tell whose was whose. So we are a city, right? And so from our charter, that's probably one of the changes we made to this policy to say we're a city, and probably what we really quote unquote care about more than anything else. If we look at the one that says Section D fiscal management on the top, that is MASC's, and we can see in their red what they're suggesting we change. And what they want us to change is the word dispensing to the word dispersing. Then they added some legal references. So the red under legal references, and then the red under cross references. I am going to try to be very careful when I say to you, as the chair, I'm trying to bring you forward what MASC is suggesting we change. I'm trying not to tell you what I personally think, although we're in an open meeting, so we're going to have those suggestions and we're going to have those talks when we decide, when somebody makes a motion. When I ask for a motion and we have a motion, we get to talk about this particular policy. Do we want to make these changes or not? Okay, so I'm just bringing forward to you what MASC is suggesting we do, and I have no idea why MASC suggested this, but in my role as the chair, not as the policy chair, but as the chair of finance that was assigned these policies to review, what I'm trying to bring forward and what I will bring forward from now on is a track changes file. The base will be Beverly's, and layered on top will be the MASC changes. Okay, so does anybody have any questions about that's how we get to where we are? I brought forward another example because policy DBC, David, Barney, Charlie, if we look in our big spreadsheet, this policy is not based on MASC. So let me find it in the Word doc, DBC. Let me scroll back up here. Hold, please, while we find all the fun things on the screen at the same time. So here's DBC on the screen. There's a lot of red in this policy, and this is MASC's. However, get out of here. Where is my Excel file? Where'd my Excel file go? Hold, please. If we look here on line 158 of our policy map, and we go over to column J, Beverly has a policy DBC, budget deadlines and schedules, and it is not based on MASC. And so I bring you it just to show you, like, you might want to notice how different it is than ours. And because it is so different, there are huge material differences in between the MASC version and our version. And because the policy map says that ours is not based on MASC, you're not going to see nearly as close of a one-to-one mapping as the DH version that we just looked at. So in that kind of case, I have to, in my chair role, look for material differences. Even though the MASC version is not what we based on, it could still have material changes that would be relevant to ours. So it becomes much more subjective as opposed to objective. And that is a big challenge. That is a burden I have to bear to not bring any subjectivity into it when I bring you forward changes like this. Okay, and then the last scenario is when MASC has a policy and we don't. And so I showed that in this map earlier, and we have one of those this evening in your packet. So you only have one version of a file because it is the MASC version. And the fact of the matter is that policy we're all not going to talk about. We're going to kind of give to our administrators to decide, do we think we want this policy? And then based on their recommendation, it may come back to our group. All right. Any questions? Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing for a second, and I'm going to get our agenda on the screen. I apologize, this is going to take half a minute, because I just have, going back to the shoveled versus disheveled thing. And we're going to start working through, I'm going to, actually, Ms. Sherburne, I'm going to give you an opportunity. Do we want to go out of order? Do you want to do the voting things? We could pause policy work and go do all our voting things.
That would be great if we could do that. Yes, that would be great.
Okay, so I usually share everything for you. Is there anything you can do without me sharing it?
I can, well, everybody did receive it in their packet, but the gifts to schools,
Okay,
the gifts to schools report was sent to the committee, and we're looking for approval of $325 to gifts to schools, which is for district-wide and for the Hannah Elementary School.
I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Manzo.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. DeFranza. Gosh dang it. Okay, awesome. I appreciate that. Anybody have any questions about this set of gifts? I see none, and we have no one remote. I'm going to pause here for a second. Ms. Flowers, Council President Flowers might be joining us. So if you could watch for that, I would appreciate it. Okay. All those in favor? 5 to none, 5 to 0. And I said earlier, she doesn't vote anyway, so we're not doing a roll call vote, even if she jumps online. Ms. Sherburne, is there something else you would like to go next?
The next item that I have is the Beverly 2024 DESE grants. These are 2 grants that we received since I brought them forth last month, the other ones. So we have grant number 185, which is the High Quality Instructional Materials Implementation Continuation Grant for $202,200. And the grant number 215, the genocide education grant in the amount of $32,000. So these are continuation grants that we've had last year, and they give us an allotment for the second year. So we're looking for the amount of $234,200 to be approved.
I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr.
Second.
Manzo. Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Sherburne on these grants? Seeing none, all those in favor? Fantastic, 5-0.
The next thing I have is custodial subs. So I have it on here as custodial sub rates. So when I sent this to
Here it
the
comes.
committee, it shows all of the non-units, but we're only looking to approve the custodial sub rates. That it was for the thing. So what happened was last month when I came forward asking to have the retired custodial sub rates, I met with Mr. Shiroli and Mr. Collins, and they had asked me if we could get the regular custodial rate increased. So I put it in for $19 per hour at their request. But I did it for the 3 years because we didn't know if we need to increase it next year. We'll move forward if it comes. The difficulty they're having with the rate we had was not, they were not getting subs in. So we were paying regular custodians time and a half, which was much more. So that's why we wanted to get this, to get a custodial sub base.
All right, so let me go back to this other thing on my screen, and here's our agenda. So again, for people watching from home, when we have an item with an asterisk next to it, it means we need to vote. And so I'm looking for a motion to approve this new rate for
The
just the
custodian.
custodians,
Substitutes
substitutes.
at $19 per hour.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Manzo and Ms. DeFranza. If I can just take that shortcut, I'm going to take that shortcut every day that ends in Y. Any questions? I am so challenged with names.
Just out of curiosity, what was the rate?
Believe it was $16.50.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well deserved.
And Ms. Sherburne, I believe I heard you say we were paying way more because we had to pay somebody time and a half overtime. And
Yes.
so, in fact, I don't have to worry about where am I going to find the money to fund this added rate, because we're actually going to end up saving some money.
Yes.
All right. Any other questions? All those in favor? 5-0. All right, budget
I
transfers?
do not have any budget
Oh,
transfers.
Thank goodness,
for-
because I didn't find them in my downloaded file.
I should have said if any, but I didn't. I apologize.
That's all right.
The next thing I have is the buildings and grounds update. There is no vote on this item. If anybody has any questions on it, it's very short and simple report for us, but if anybody has any questions, they can email me and Mr. Shiroli.
Any short and sweet questions right here, right now? All right, I'm going to send mine across the table right now. Doing my tour earlier today, I noticed that one of the gates is missing over here on the side.
Oh, exterior.
Right, like where the buses drive through, then a car can drive through as well, and the car gate appears to be totally missing. So maybe we can get a little update about that.
I will pass that information on.
That's just very advantageous that I happen to be
We
giving
always
that tour.
appreciate to have extra eyes on the buildings to let us know when they see things like that that we don't
Exactly.
notice. If I can just do my administration update, and then we can dig right into our policies, and we'll have just about an hour to get what we
And
can
do
get done.
you, and you sent it late?
Just sent
You
it
sent it today, right?
today,
Sorry.
late
Okay,
today.
hold on, I need to download that. And if you want to start speaking to it, I
Sure,
will.
it's just our, beginning, just mentioning that it's October 25th already, the end of October. What we plan to discuss tonight is our policy reviews, and we're going to talk about the FY25 budget development process, which really gives me like pause that we just started the fiscal year and we're already talking about next year.
Here we go.
and the FY '24 financial reports, the revenues and expenditures.
Okay, I'm very close to sharing your report.
So the second page of my items here is talking about the policies reviewed. I took the policy numbers that Lorinda sent out with our packets and put that in there to talk about which policies we're starting to review for this upcoming F&F meetings.
Yeah, this is really unfortunately, I'm sorry to say to especially my members of the public, this is a big set of policies and it's just for this meeting. There will be other policies at other meetings. So we kind of needed to get through a backlog, so to speak. And then hopefully it'll just be maybe 1 or 2 at a meeting, not 10.
And the other thing that I just wanted to bring forward to the F&F committee, because the superintendent's going to be talking about it, the committee of the whole later on this evening, and we just wanted to let the financial of F&F people know that we have developed a calendar for a budget development process for FY '25.
Oh, it says
And-
24 on the top, Jean.
That's last year.
Oh, I added last year, so, but don't look at that.
I have
Okay,
it right
I'm
there.
taking it off the screen. Never mind.
I have it right there. You can just-
It's right on your slide. It's
Yes,
just
you
not
know, I
the-
went out and grabbed it
Okay.
off of a folder because I was doing this after
Okay,
my
sorry.
training class and was not paying
So here,
attention.
we'll zoom in on this one.
So
people
what
can
I'll
see
be doing here is talking about, so October of 2023, we're doing our budget calendar development. The superintendent and myself sets our goals on when we're going to be discussing budgeting. So on this meeting, we are going to be presenting this calendar update. The superintendent will be meeting with the school committee members and principals and department heads, along with myself, to talk about budget priority discussions. And then November 29th, at the committee of the whole meeting, is when we start bringing forth what our priorities would be for the FY '25 budget. In December, we'll be continuing to talk about the budget discussions based on what those priorities were. And then January, we will again continue talking each month at the committee of the whole meetings, then become budget discussions, or part of it. And the governor's proposed budget usually is released in January. And then we keep continuing each month, and then we'll have the House Ways and Means, which usually comes out in April, and then the Senate Ways and Means in May, and then in June, the end of the school year, Blink would already be there, the budget will be finalized. And we do have our public hearing, will be scheduled on May 8th. And that will be before a regular school committee meeting, before CISL, before a regular school committee meeting. So that's really what the budget is, budget calendar process is, and I'll send out the correct one to the committee.
Okay, and I will say, if we scroll back here and we look at what policies we're reviewing, one of these policies this evening is DBD, budget planning. And so we are going to actually see a policy this evening that deals with this exact calendar. So that's somewhat timely.
And then the final thing we'll be talking about is FY '24, which we are currently in, even though it is 2023, get everybody all confused. We'll be talking about the revenues and expenses.
All right, revenues are on the screen.
Yep. So I'm kind of thinking we should probably stop here instead of digging into these two reports, so we can get to our
Go to
policy,
policy
and then
land.
if anybody has any questions.
It's like, okay, okay. All right, so now that I have described to all of you how much fun and how we get to the policies that are coming to us, I will, I had the agenda up. I'm trying to show our track changes files. So for everybody who's trying to play along at home, And the naming conventions, I try to put TC on the end if it's a file that has track changes. Okay, so let me share my screen one more time. I'm going to pull up the agenda, and I will maybe ask you, Ms. Coelho, on your list, if we go in that order where we're going to write down what we decided to do, that would probably be the best, right? So which one is first on your voting? DBC. So I'm going to pull up the file. Again, my naming convention is BPS. We start with the Beverly Public Schools version, and we apply the MASC track changes on top. I'm going to pull up this file for us to look at, and we see in track changes land, there's a new legal reference, and MASC has this note, and they ask us to really look at this and make sure that our charter, for instance, because we're a city, not a town, make sure that we're going to still be in compliance with our charter. And because this policy was already designed for our charter, we already have our legal reference of the Beverly City Charter, Article 6, Section 2. I am fairly confident that we're good there. And so really the only thing we're looking at, I've highlighted it a little bit on my screen here, is this additional MGL reference that MASC is suggesting that we make. So, to begin discussions, I need a motion that we accept this change.
So moved.
I need a second.
Second.
Fantastic. And now the floor is open for discussion, whether we should do this, whether we should not do this. If anybody has any comments, questions, suggestions. Yes, Mr. Manzo.
So, do we know if that legal reference applies?
Do you see my little note there in the side? I do not, and so maybe we table this one because I did not find my MGL. I know where it is in my house, but I didn't actually go get it off the shelf and open it up and do that homework before this evening's meeting. That's totally on me. So if we want to table this, we can absolutely table it.
I motion that we table this policy till,
What is it called when the person who decides how we follow our procedures?
Robert's rules.
I'm looking at you, Miss
Parliamentarian.
Abel. Does he need to withdraw his motion before he makes a new one?
Oh, there we go. So I'll withdraw my previous motion.
Parliamentarian.
Parliamentarian.
Parliamentarian. You're withdrawing your
Withdraw my
motion?
earlier motion, yes.
Okay. Do I need a second on that? Uh-oh, she got the book out. The cheat sheet.
It's different.
All right, how about Ms. DeFranza? Would you withdraw your second? Then we'll be super sure.
I don't think we need to, but
Sure.
You don't think we need to?
once the motion is
Okay.
withdrawn by the original proposal, it's
Okay.
drawn. So,
Maybe I'll learn about this when I go to the MASC conference in a week and a half. Okay, fantastic. So you'd like to make a new motion now?
Oh, so we're just going to table this policy discussion until,
Can we talk about it?
Yes, of course.
Oh, as I pulled up the law, that
Thank
it's
you.
here, it's like 5 lines long. So I'm going to say that, looking at it, I agree that it applies. So what it says is the school committee in each city or town and each regional school district shall have the power to select and to terminate. The superintendent shall review and approve budgets for the public education in the district and shall establish educational goals and policies and schools for the schools and district consistent with the requirements of the law and the statewide goals and standards established by the Board of Education. The school committee in each city and town and regional district may select a superintendent jointly and with school committees and superintendents are talking about that, so it doesn't apply.
So this
I would say
legal
that
reference.
this legal reference does, because it says that the school committee in each will approve budgets in public education.
Right, it's defining what we actually have as powers as a school committee.
Yes.
Which is to review the budgets, vote on the budgets, and review the superintendent of schools, hire, fire, and write the review of the superintendent of
Yes.
schools
So I would say that we can add that and
safely.
safely.
All right,
Just for a point of order, your motion to withdraw.
microphone.
Motion to withdraw a motion is not debatable, does not require a second, is not amendable, but does require a majority vote, so you have not yet withdrawn the original motion.
Because we didn't
we don't
vote
have
on
to
it.
do anything.
But that's good that we didn't yet withdraw it, because now, based on what Ms. Sherburne said, I do think, I appreciate that you challenged that, because I did have it as an action item and I hadn't gotten to that. And so thank you for looking that up. So the motion's on the table. Anybody else want to discuss? Our original motion is still on the table with a second. And, all right, so shall we accept these changes from MASC?
Yes.
Voting, 5-0. Fantastic. We have one down, 20 to go. No, I'm just kidding. It's not really 20. Not really 20. I apologize. No, I don't want to save any changes. Just get out. Just get out. And I'll say too that now my next step is that I need to take these changes and give them back to, right now it's Donna, because she's such a wonderful asset to our community, and then she'll update the version that's on our website. So that's like another action for me. All right, what letter is next, Miss Coelho?
DBD.
DBD. Opening that up with track changes. Okay, and I'm trying to put it on my screen. You guys, again, you should have all of these in electronic form. I don't know if you printed your own packets or not, but I'm trying to put them on the screen so you can see them. And this relatively minor changes. If we go back to the massive policy map, you would see that our version of DBD is in fact based on MASC. And so this was a pretty easy quote-unquote edit for me to bring forward the changes that MASC is suggesting. And there are really two, right? In the budget planning process for the school system, instead of the school committee, we made a lot of these changes. Ms. Abel remembered, we made a lot of these changes a while back. It's not the school committee who decides this, it's the superintendent or designee. And MASC says, you're not striving to do this, you're going to do it. We have such confidence in you. We're taking out that little term strive too. And then I added underneath the source the fact that we do have some Beverly specific things in here, and we had not yet noted that on this particular line. So the very last highlighted blue down at the bottom is a Lorinda edit, not an MASC edit. All right, I'm looking for a motion. What do you not see?
No, you're on the same, except they're red on ours.
Oh, I'm sorry, they're blue on my screen. I think, well, I'll have to figure out what that setting is and then tell people so that you can, if you want to be aligned, you can have the same color scheme. All right, a motion to accept these changes?
So moved.
Second, thank you. Comments, questions, debating? Anybody not like them? All right, voting. 5-0. And Ms. Coelho, we do not, because nobody's remote, we don't need to, like, say how everybody voted, right? Cool. All right, what's next?
DBG.
DBG. Uh-oh. How about, I'm pulling back up.
Very end, last one.
Why are we out of?
PDF.
Okay, hold on a second. Oh, because Beverly does not have this one. And so you guys should have a file that has like no track changes in it. It's just the MASC one. And this is the one, Ms. Sherburne, that I asked if we should think about adopting this policy, right? If I come back to our massive spreadsheet and we look at, hold please, DBG, notice we don't have a DBG in here in this list in column D. And so I have kind of punted this over to administration. And so there's nothing for us to do this evening, but it might come back to us. Okay? And I think, it's never my goal to give Ms. Sherburne or the entire administrative team more work to do. But I think when we look at the totality of the policies that we have in place and we compare them to what we actually do in our budget processes, then we'll be able to tell whether we need this particular policy or not. Okay, so I think on your sheet, we're going to say like NA, just like, or skipped or deferred. I don't.
Do you want to table it or refer it to another?
I'm going to table, yes.
All right, so I make a motion, we table this policy.
Thank you, Mr. Manzo. Thank you for the second, Ms. DeFranza. So bad with names. Okay, any comments or questions on that?
I have one, if that's, okay. It seems to me the only thing that this particular policy is doing is changing the approval policy by, right now, you can only vote for one big number, right? And this is now just changing it, you're going to approve individual cost centers, which we've done in the past for particular reasons. And so, to me, that seems to be as much a school committee preference as an administrative preference. And so hopefully the two of you together, the groups together, will land on what you would prefer, how you prefer to approve your budget, whether it's one number or, a dozen numbers. So, but that's really the only thing this is doing that's any different than what you do now.
Okay.
So all I'm saying is I think the school committee should have some voice, not this group. The school committee should have some voice because in the end, you're approving the budget.
I appreciate that. And so what I'm doing, I'm highlighting the third paragraph of this, which absolutely does not apply to us because we're a city, not a
Goes
town,
away,
right?
yeah.
So this would be like one of those things that if we say, oh, we're taking MASCs, but for instance, we would, and there is the note on the bottom that says you need to go check your own charter. If we adopt this, we would make significant changes because of that. And then in that column in the big spreadsheet, we would say MASC, comma, Beverly or Beverly Zone or whatever, right? So, but I also get your point about whether we adopt a big number or by line item. And we've always done a big number, as far as I recall.
There have been instances when we did it, in one circumstance, a school committee member recused himself from one of the cost centers for reasons, a relative may have worked at that building, or, sometimes there's an occasional overlap. That was the only time I can recall that we did it that way. But for the, I think it's worthy of more discussion, but I actually think this would restrict you to only doing it cost center. I don't know whether if you don't have it, you could do it either way without it. So I think that's what I would want you to, do you want the flexibility of doing it whichever way works for the committee, or do you want to tie yourself into doing it one way or another? So I think, in future discussions, that's how I would pose it, to think about.
And I'm looking down to the end of the table because there are times that we have talked about not having a policy. We have a lot of policies, and sometimes I think to a fault, because in the case of how do we vote on a budget, the MGL that Jean just read to us says we have the right to vote on a budget. So combined with what you just said, leaving ourselves open for the flexibility of how to vote, maybe we don't want this policy at all. We have the right to do this by law, and so why have a policy? Our policy manual is very big already. All right, so those are kinds of the pros and the cons.
That's what I would think about.
So there's a motion on the table and a second to table this. Any further discussion? All those in favor of tabling? 5-0. Okay, next on your list, my assistant this evening, and thank you.
DBJ.
DBJ, Budget Transfer Authority. coming to a screen near you. All right, so, two changes there on the screen. Instead of school department in the first paragraph, it's the word district. So instead of the school department's budget, it's the district's budget. This is really just a little wordsmithing. And in the third paragraph, instead of the director of finance and operation, it says school business officer. So again, we have a director of finance and operations, so maybe we don't want to accept that particular change. And this is a great example. We could accept the first change and not the second. All options are available to us. We could accept none, all, or any combination in between. Okay, I'm looking for a motion so we can begin discussion.
I move that we approve the policy on budget transfer authority.
The updates, okay. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. All right.
I don't think I'm understanding the motion. Are we making a motion to accept the changes as they are in the document?
We have to open it for discussion, right? And then we can amend, right? So I'm going to look to Ms. Sherburne, and I'm going to say, would you like it to stay as a Director of Finance and Operation? Because that's what you really are. Yes, Ms. DeGeneva.
I would like to point out that on the,
Microphone, please.
that on the, another page, on the purchasing, they refer to the Director of Finance and Operations. So if we change it in one spot, you might want to change it in the other. But because we already have it in its existence, I would say Director sounds good.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the one thing is that, Director of Finance and Operations is my title, but the position of being school business
also
officer
that.
is the same thing. So, to me, it's tomato, tomato. But, by it in here right now, it's the Director of Finance and Operation. If you leave it as the school business officer, that is your Director of Finance and Operation. If you were to ever change that position to another name, you'd have to change all your policies to say that. So with that said, I'm okay with it saying school business officer because that is what your Director of Finance and Operations is.
All right. And I then really very much take the point that Mr. Geneva just made, which is that wearing my hat of policy review, that we should try to work through all of them and become consistent. And so if we go to this, then each time we review any given other policy, we should have that in the back of our heads to keep that, to work towards that consistency. Yes, Mr. Manzo?
So one other way to look at this is that, so as it's written here, school business officer is in caps. And so that's like a title, right? If you made it all lowercase, then basically all you're saying is that it's a school business officer. And so that's more of a function than a title. So that's more generic.
Yeah.
And so if you wanted to use a more generic approach to it, just change the way it's written. If you want to keep that school business officer in there,
Or you could just leave it
or just leave it the way it
the
is.
way it is with the title it is right now.
Yes, Doctor.
I personally feel like there needs to be no changes.
Okay. Make it.
To the second paragraph or the first paragraph? Neither.
So is that a motion?
Is that a friendly amendment?
Well, that's why I'm asking because the initial motion was to accept the changes and discuss it, but I felt like there was no need for changes. So it's within this discussion of the initial
Oh, yeah,
motion.
now it's complicated, yeah.
Yeah.
We're
I don't
collectively
see
a little
that
rusty
the-
at doing policy.
Yeah, to clarify, I feel like the titular change from school department to district is really not significant. And I think that if Director of Finance and Operations exists elsewhere and is compliant with what we do in Beverly, that it needs to just remain that way. And wherever we see school business officer, to Mr. Manzo's point, if it ever gets lowercase, we'll have confusion about which school and which officer.
Oh, yeah.
And I'd rather not have that confusion and be consistent with what we heard you point out about other places saying Director of Finance and Operations. So I think the policy as is, non-red line, seems consistent with Beverly.
Okay. The nuance of the English language, yes, Ms. Coelho.
I would have to agree with Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza on this because
Oh, sure, get her name right. Make me
Reading-
look bad.
I have OCD. Reading some of the other policies, she's correct. It is Director of Finance and Operations is in about like 7 other policies that we have. So then we'd have to go through all of those and change those again too.
Okay, yes, Mr. Manzo.
I withdraw my motion.
You're on the Hanukkah card list. Thank you. You're my favorite. Okay, so,
You have to vote on it.
Vote to withdraw.
all right, vote to withdraw.
I thought it was one of the ones that, okay, yes. Yes.
5 to
It
0.
doesn't have to be seconded, but it has to be voted on.
Yeah, for a motion to modify or withdraw a motion, you do not need a second, you do not need to debate, it's not amendable, but you do need a majority vote to withdraw.
Okay, so it passed, the withdrawal passed 5 to 0. So procedurally speaking, do I need to vote to say we're rejecting all these changes and we're leaving this policy as is?
That's what we did to be safe in the other meeting.
Okay, I would like such a motion.
I think
moved.
technically you just say, we
Mark as
review, we mark it as review. The motion would be, we're going to mark this policy as reviewed and accepted. And that way you don't, it doesn't have to go for a first reading or a second reading, it just goes in a pile and
Exactly, it
moves
just
on.
is, and so to, again, close the loop, so then when that happens, Donna updates the date on the policy, because we accepted all of our policies at the end of last year, and over the course of 5 years, we need to review all of our policies. So every time we do one of these, whether we accept changes or not, the date on this particular policy will be updated to this meeting. All right, so, but
Motion to mark it as reviewed.
motion to mark it as reviewed. No changes.
So moved?
Second.
Okay.
Fantastic. Any discussion? Here we go, voting. 5-0. Whoo! Okay, Ms. Coelho, which one's next?
You got the
DD?
hardest job tonight.
I know.
Yeah.
DD is next.
All right, DD, Dunkin' Donuts, here we come. School committee runs on Dunkin'. Funding proposals and applications, and again, I have a little cheat sheet here. Our version of this policy is based on MGL, it's and MASC. So there is a whole new paragraph in this particular update and some additional updated legal references. So I have it on my screen if anybody wants to look. I'll give you all a minute to read it. Hopefully, I kind of thought about it ahead of time, but all right, so I want to say something about the first paragraph. So in this track changes, I'm highlighting it on my screen. If there's red text or blue, whoever, depending on what your settings are on your Microsoft Word, that means it's new text. So all of this text is from MASC that Beverly did not have before, and this bottom, the very last paragraph, is also new text that Beverly did not have before. And so this idea that the superintendent has to make sure that we have a written set of procedures. And up here, reference to the fact that there is a state law, and then there was some debate about whether this word should be must or should be shall. And so I put both words in there, we, in the very least, if we decide to accept these words, then we have to pick which specific word for this sentence we will use. And I certainly know what we do for a procedure.
Right, yeah, so
No, you may not discuss yet until I have a motion.
I make a motion to accept the changes.
Fantastic. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Sherburne?
My only clarifying here is it's saying that the district, it's saying in accordance with the state law, all grants and gifts to the district must be reviewed and accepted by the school committee before expenditure. I know we have to accept them. The review, I'm wondering what they mean by reviewed. So I do not bring the grants to you, nor would you want to get all of that documentation. Just ask Ms. Flaherty, Dr. Flaherty on that. They could be upwards of 100.
Pages on a short one.
Yes.
120.
Yes.
But like tonight, you brought forward, you
So when
said,
it
will
says
we accept
reviewed,
these?
so
That's my
I just want to make
definition
sure
of
the committee,
review.
when it says reviewed, means that I've brought it forward and you're accepting it. So I understand that this is what MASC has in there with the reviewed, but it's not clear what they review.
Would you like the word presented?
I think that and will be accepted. I think must stays there, get rid of reviewed and, because they're accepted by the school committee. And you do, when we bring them forth, you do have the, you can ask, as we've had other meetings, people ask, what is the grant for? But that's the only, I could just say, okay, the reviewed in my eyes is that I brought it forward, you reviewed it and accepted, if we want to take it that. But my premise was, I just wanted to make sure we're not voting in that you have to have each and every grant brought forth for acceptance.
Thoughts around the table?
So I have a question. Currently, what we do is we have a list, and then we vote to accept traditionally. So could we say the district must essentially accept, it's a weird mishmash. So we're taking out shall, because then we can't say that, we shall accept, because we do that after the ability to have conversation. But it sounds like we must accept it before expenditure. Does that always happen in terms of logistics?
So you do have to accept any, that I cannot spend a grant unless you accept it.
Right.
But usually I bring forth the name of the grant, a little synopsis of what it is, and then you accept it, and then I can spend it, so.
I think you're just asking, is that what's, are you thinking, does that constitute your review, right?
think it
Like,
does.
I think that's what Jean's
We
just
did.
making
I
sure
mean,
that
I
we're.
think that's what we think of it
Yeah.
as.
Yeah.
so-
Right, so I think that the essence of the review is the procedure that we have in place right now. I think that's
Okay.
mostly what you're questioning, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that they weren't anticipating that they're getting the whole grant.
Correct.
No.
Yes, Mr. Manzo.
My guess is, and again, it's just a guess, that they put the review in there because otherwise it reads, you have to accept this grant. And I guess the option,
Okay.
so by doing it this way, you have the option, not that we ever
no, thank
would,
you.
say no, thank you. So we're reviewing it and then.
You know my mantra, who would ever say no to free money?
So that's my guess, but who knows?
Okay. Mike?
Yeah?
Not accepting a grant if it ties you down.
Right. And we've had discussions, and you often ask very pertinent questions about that, right? If we accept a go look at something, are we committing that we're going to do it for sure, right? And that's a great question to ask. So, all right, so I would like to make a friendly amendment that we use the word must and not shall. I put them both up there on the document, but I'm going to, friendly amendment, are we all on board with must instead of shall?
Yeah, doesn't,
All right, so I'm going to fix that, and then the motion is to accept the changes as is with that amended. Anybody have anything else?
just one more thing.
Yes,
Does
sir.
this change anything in terms of what the administration does?
You mean in terms of the last sentence too? Yeah,
Yeah.
no. That that is we're required even to accept some of the state and federal grants to have that written set of policies. We have that written set of policies, so.
I mean, I think in general, we should just be cognizant of any of these policy changes going to make life more or less difficult for the administrators who actually have to do the policy, so.
Right, so I appreciate that, right? And the things that we do, we should have in writing. And so at a big meeting, probably 2 weeks ago, we accepted a new policy around like what our libraries are actually doing. And we've been doing that, but we didn't have it written down, right? So sometimes we want to actually explicitly say what we're doing, and I think that's the case of this last paragraph. But I absolutely appreciate that. It's never my goal to give other people more work to do. All right, so motion on the table. All those in favor? All right, we are accepting as is presented, D with the friendly amendment. We went must instead of shall. Is DGA next?
DGA.
DGA is next. Authorized signatures. Oy. Okay. I want to draw your attention to the note at the bottom of this particular policy, because we did, during the time of COVID, go down to a single signer, but we have returned to a 3-signer model. And I will also say that way back in the day, we took turns who those 3 signers were, and we kind of rotated. It is a little bit of a, I think burden is a harsh word, but I will use the word burden. It's a little bit of a burden. It's less of a burden now that we get to sign electronically. But it is a commitment every single week to say, okay, and if, for instance, if I'm going to be on vacation, do I think that I'm going to be in a place where I'm going to have internet access where I can review the warrants and then be able to actually sign them or not? Versus before, when we did the rotation thing and each of the 6 of us had a week, if I was going to be on vacation, I would just swap a week with somebody else. So that's my introduction to this particular set of changes. We need to, I think we should be cognizant of that and think about that. I certainly know Mr. Manzo has that way back time machine experience. I think, I'm not sure about the 2 of you, if you've ever been. So that's just a little background for each of you, or for you, Dr. McKenzie, DeFranza. Yes, yes, Superintendent Shortcheck.
So I just had a comment on this when I was looking this over earlier today. You have struck out that the president of the school committee or designee and superintendent or designee sign payrolls. We actually still do payrolls with just the single, just Rachel and myself. That's and that comes, Donna sends that to us, and we do that electronically. So I don't know that I would strike that out, because that is how the payroll warrant is the only one that I think we're currently doing that way, with just the 2 of us signing off on that. So I just wouldn't want you to delete that, because that's what we do.
Okay, well, that's
So-
fantastic. And then I would say that maybe, all right, so first, we need a motion.
For what?
I'm going to ask for a motion to accept as is, and then we'll friendly amend.
So moved.
Second.
Fantastic. Okay, so the first friendly amendment from our superintendent of schools is that we do not strike the first sentence, because in fact, that is what we do. That is what we do.
That's just specific for payrolls, and that
Yeah.
one, that sentence really does
Okay,
just say
and then
payrolls.
what I would say is, we need to talk about the single member thing, and then we need to change, in that second sentence, all warrants to add except payroll.
Just warrant
Because we do something different when payroll than all others. Yes or no?
That, or you could call them vendor warrants versus, because that's what they are, vendor. They're accounts payable warrants versus
Payroll.
payroll.
Thoughts around the table?
I agree with what she said, put something in front of it, but I also want to point out something I got confused. a lot of these say just the committee versus the school committee, and all of a sudden it says the committee, and I was wondering, what committee are they talking about? So I don't know if you want to put back school committee every time there's just the committee? Only because I question myself, as what committee?
I would
And
agree
it's
with
all-
that point.
And it's on several other pages, other policies that refer to the committee and not knowing.
I think the assumption there is that these are the school committee's policies, so that,
Yeah,
but you're right.
But
it could
it's
be
not
the Finance
consistent.
and Facilities Subcommittee of,
Yeah, I think the removal of the first sentence is what makes it not make sense anymore, because it refers back to initially saying the president of the school committee. And then when it says committee, you know what it's referring to. So when you take that sentence out, I think you do have to reinsert school committee.
But we're
Make it
putting that
clear.
sentence back in. We're
Right.
putting the first
Right.
sentence back
So
in
if you
per our
have that- So now
so now
superintendent.
it's clear.
Right, so then I think they
clarifies
reference
it a
each
little
other.
but what about the other policies that just say the committee? There's other pages.
I agree
didn't-
with you that it should say
Yeah.
school committee if there doesn't exist a referencing statement like this one. Yeah.
Okay, so now can we go to the second sentence about the roll call vote of a single member? What we do today is, it was not a roll call vote, and it was, and it's 3 members, and we no longer rotate. So I would suggest that we have this policy say what we actually do. And maybe when it goes to the committee of the whole will want to amend to say we should go back to rotating all 6 of us. This committee could say that instead. I don't know.
Right, so the one thing I'm thinking of is where it says the committee will designate by roll call. That actually is a may designate. You could bring that forth. We could change it. Right now, it has to be signed by a majority or one single. And your majority is 3 of you, and then the mayor signs all of them. That's where it becomes majority. So maybe this goes back to table to get what it says, because there is a ruling that you can have, you may vote one. If not, it's majority.
Did you have your hand up there at the end of the table? Because you've told
I
me
am
before not to call on you.
I am not a member of this committee, but I do have recent MASC training, and because our city has Carol at City Hall,
Wallowitz.
because we have that financial control, we don't need a majority, and that was our preference. It was a preference of Beverly, so just informational. So I think the may could work.
So that's just saying if we run into a pandemic again, we would be able to do that. I wouldn't want to take this out, because then you may not do it if it's not in there that you may do it. Sorry.
All right, thoughts on that particular word change? Can that be a friendly amendment? Any pushback on that friendly amendment? All right, well, that word has been changed to may. And I now wish to draw our attention to the 2 words, all warrants. When we put the first sentence back in, this is no longer true, right? So, Ms. Sherburne, will you tell me vendor? You wanted to add the word vendor there to differentiate in between payroll warrants and vendor warrants.
Correct.
I would like to make that friendly amendment. Any objections?
Just adding the word vendor.
Yeah, to differentiate in between the 2
Removing
types
all.
of.
Not to be too picky, but then I would change the first sentence where it says sign payrolls to say payroll warrants
Okay.
as well.
Friendly
If you're
amendment?
distinguishing between the kinds of warrants, payroll warrants and vendor warrants, and then it's clear.
Okay. Anybody else? Any more changes to this? So I'm going to put the first sentence back in. And the second sentence has the word may And then we added our types of warrants, payroll warrants in the first sentence, vendor warrants in the second sentence. Are we good to go? All right, all those in favor? All right, I'm gonna have my work cut out for me.
Sorry, can I say one more thing?
Yes, you may.
Where it says source MASC, you might want to write Beverly next to it, because we altered the
Okay.
MASC.
Another friendly amendment. Any opposition to that, adding Beverly as a source? Okay. All right, and now that's our proposal. All those in favor? Fantastic, 5-0. Our next one, Miss Coelho, please.
DH.
DH, bonded employees and officers. This is one of the ones I put in your packet as an example. Really pretty simple editing. They want to wordsmith, they want to change dispensing to dispersing, and they updated both the legal MGL references and the cross references, which actually are often very helpful. I'm looking for a motion to accept the changes.
So moved.
Second.
All right, fantastic. Good luck. Just pick some people there, Miss Coelho. You get to decide the tie. You're like the ump in baseball right now. Any comments, questions, discussion on this particular one? All right, all those in favor? 5-0. Oh, hallelujah. One went quick. Okay, here we go. Hold on. Get out of here. DH, save. Okay. DIE is next.
We only got 7 more.
Come on now, we're going faster.
DI.
DI, okay. Bad alphabeting over here. DI, fiscal accounting and reporting. A new set of additional words. I'm gonna give you all a minute to read through them. There's also additional MGLs and cross-references. Okay, and I'm going to start with Dr. Trocheck, because this is really all about, falls to you. And I, again, believe we do this already. It is just, spelling out all the things that you get to do relative to the fiscal accounting that happens in our school district. So, from an administrative point of view, how do you feel about this edit to this particular policy?
I just think it's spelling out what the ultimate responsibility for receiving and properly accounting for. Those are the proper accounting procedures that we would want to maintain, so.
And we do
And,
that.
yeah, we better.
So yeah, exactly. You better, right? So we're good with that?
Yeah.
All right, given
Yes.
Dr. Trocheck and you too, Ms. Sherburne, okay. Given that, I'm looking for a motion to accept these changes as is.
Motion to accept?
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? All right, we might actually finish at this pace. Here we go. Our next one is DIE, correct? Audits. DIE. All right.
It's this one.
All right, so I'll point out that these two are incredibly different, and so the file on my screen, on the top little part here in black print, is ours. It's short and sweet, even though it says its source is MASC. And then, but look, the MASC version of this file is incredibly longer, and then it also says at the bottom, references to a city charter may be appropriate here, and the content may require a change to the content of your policy. So we clearly have altered our policy, but in fact, ours still says source MASC. I, as your chair of finance and facilities, also wearing my policy hat, would say that this guy should say our source is MASC/Beverly or comma Beverly, and that my most objective sense was that there are no material changes to the MASC policy that are applicable to our itty-bitty audit policy. That said, if some of you feel otherwise, that's why we're reviewing it. If you think there's something that MASC is saying in theirs that we should say in ours that does not conflict with our charter, please make that amendment or a motion to table if you want more time to chew on this guy.
What was your recommendation again, Lorinda?
My recommendation is that we update the source of ours to add the fact that Beverly has very much made this our own.
Right. But then make all the other changes?
None of the other changes,
None of the
no.
other changes, okay.
I don't think any of them apply
Okay,
because of our chart, because ours is so short, because of our charter.
okay. But just out of curiosity, do you do all this anyways?
Yes, that's what I was trying to briefly look at this. I would like to table, if we're not going to be adding that, I would like to table it just to make sure the dates that they're putting. So some of the financial compliance reports, some is done by the city and some is done by the school department. I would just want to double check that.
But we're not taking any of that big, long part. Ours is up top, and it's really short, and it has no dates in it, thus giving you maximum flexibility over there on that side of the table.
I'm fine with that.
And there's no legal obligation to do it this way. I guess that's the only other reason to make any change is that if state law has somehow changed to say this is how you have to do it, then the policy should reflect it. So if you're tabling it anyways,
Okay,
then maybe take
if
a
you're
look.
motioning to table it anyways.
So maybe take a look to make sure that the law hasn't changed and it says to do all this, you know.
I will take that action item, Mr. Manzo, when you make the motion to table.
I move that we table this policy on further
Second.
review.
With an additional action item for me that I need to double check our charter. All right, DIE. Any further comments on DIE? All right, all those in favor of tabling, and Lorinda gets some more homework, 5-0. Okay, so we are up against the end of our meeting, and we have several other policies that I had hoped to get through this evening. We also did not review, like we normally do, the revenues and expenses. Does anyone have, I'm gonna move us away from policy for 1 minute. Does anybody have any questions, concerns, or comments on the revenues and the expenses for Ms. Sherburne while we're at the table? They were in your packet. You certainly have them. You're welcome to review them and send her any questions you might have. And what I think I'm going to do is, hopefully now that we're all a little better about doing policy, and I'll brush up on my parliamentary skills, is we'll push the rest of these policies to our next meeting. And Ms. Sherburne and I will talk about whether we need to start early again or whether we think we can be more efficient in that. All right, so, yes, Ms. Coelho.
The next one is literally just a one-word change. We could probably do that in like a minute.
But I'm going to save that for apple, easy picking, low-hanging fruit. Okay, thank you. I had to think about what that saying was for the beginning of the next meeting, but I appreciate that. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Mr. Manzo, your microphone wasn't on, but the motion to adjourn came from Mr. Manzo. Not debatable. All those in favor? Fantastic. Thank you, guys. I know this is hard. It's a lot of work. We'll get through it, and then we'll be hopefully in a much more smooth kind of category. Thank you very much.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here in person this evening. Today is October 25th, 2023. This is a Beverly School Committee Committee of the Whole meeting, and we are using a hybrid remote platform. However, right now, all members are currently in person, which will eliminate the need for a roll call vote. I do want to thank our friends at BevCam who are live streaming us and recording us for future broadcasts. And we are using a platform that is provided at no cost to the district to make sure that remote participants can both see and hear us. I will perform a roll call vote in just a moment to let people know who's joining us on the remote platform. This is all possible because on June 16th, 2021, the former governor signed Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, and on February 12th and again on July 16th, 2022, he extended those provisions which, among other things, allow public bodies to continue to hold meetings remotely until March 31st, 2023. And now our current governor and the legislature have extended this provision again for 2 more years until March 31st, 2025. These acts specifically suspend the need for a quorum and chair to be physically present and asks our body to use technical methods to allow for safe public access. As a note, Beverly also has prior approval for remote participation on its boards and committees, although through that permission, the chair and the quorum do need to physically be present. So that will return to the table at the expiration March 31st, 2025. So as I mentioned, tonight is a committee of the whole meeting. This means we do not have a public address opportunity at this agenda. However, if you do have public comments, you can send those along to residentvoice@beverlyschools.org and or sign up for our next in-person meeting, which will be on November 15th, again in this room at 7:30 p.m. I do ask that you limit remarks to 3 minutes, and you may ask the chair to read your email into the record if you can't join us on the remote platform or in person. Joining us today are members of the school committee and various members of the district administration and leadership teams. I will conduct that roll call in just a moment, but I would ask that anyone who is, let me just admit someone. Anyone who is joining us on the remote platform should use their mute functionality, as any audio or video that you provide will become part of our meeting records. That will help prevent background noises as well. So let me now conduct the roll call vote. In person, we have Mayor Cahill.
Here.
Ms. Kimberly Quayle.
Here.
Dr. Kenan Mackenzie DeFranza.
Here.
Ms. Karen Robinson.
Here.
Dr. Jeffrey Silva.
Here.
Ms. Lorinda Visnick.
Here.
And I am Rachel Abel. We are also joined by Superintendent Dr. Sue Trocheck.
Here.
Assistant Superintendent Dr. Dorothy Flaherty. Here. We are joined online by Dr. Andre Morgan. Here. A little quiet, but I think that's our speaker because you're the first person to speak on the remote platform of the day. So we'll get BevCam just to turn up our volume. Thank you. We are joined by Ms. Jean Sherburne.
Here.
Ms. Erin Brown. Here. And we have members of our paraprofessionals and Teacher Association. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. I don't see anyone else in the room. The other names that we see online, we have a citizen who is joining us, Ms. Jerry Cahill. Okay. With that, I think our first order of business, if I remember correctly, is the Pledge of Allegiance. And Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza, would you lead us in the pledge this week?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Our next order of business is to review our meeting records from our September 27th Committee of the Whole meeting. I'm looking for a motion at first to approve the meeting record.
So moved.
Thank you, Mayor Cahill.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Were there any edits or corrections that members wish to bring to the table? Not seeing any. All those in favor? 7-0. Thank you. And next, Dr. Trocheck for your report.
I was many clicks away, sorry. All right. I have a short report this evening. The first item that we'll talk about is the budget calendar FY '25, and as Ms. Sherburne mentioned in our Finance and Facilities meeting, yes, we're talking about next year's budget already. It feels like we just started the school year, but we're planning ahead for the coming year. And then we will also be looking at the 23-24 superintendent goals as part of Ms. Abel's president's report. So just briefly, this is the first time you'll see this for the next 85 meetings that we have when we talk about budget. I'll be bringing forward and reminding you that of our goal areas, and a reminder that our budget is a document that should represent the goals that we have and that we have set for ourselves in the district. And so it's always nice for me to share out. These are goal areas that we worked on in our district improvement plan. We are in the third year of our district improvement plan. So we will be looking, that's an activity that we'll be working on this year, to create a new 3-year plan by the end of the school year. We'll be coming forward to the committee in the spring with some new goal areas. But these are the goal areas that we have been working under. And if you recall, you approved in the spring our focus areas for 23-24. Again, that underneath those broad goals, we take a look at focus areas each year and have either a continuation, an acceleration, or a change of focus under the goal area. So for this year, we're looking at fostering a positive school community, ensuring a whole child approach to success, working with effective teaching strategies, continuing our concentration on advanced coursework, and finally, climate action planning and working within the schools for efficiencies. So all I really have for you this evening, and it was forwarded to you by Donna earlier, I think yesterday, this is our planning calendar. The planning calendar just lines out how we will be addressing where we're going, and I gave you mine. Can I have it back? So today I'm bringing forward to you what that planning calendar looks like. It's part of a process, as a matter of fact, a process that we just looked at in F&F through policy, but laying out how we will proceed through the planning process for our budget planning. So as we did last year, I will begin meeting with all of you and with stakeholders across the community through the month of November to discuss budget priorities, hear from you what your priorities are, what areas you'd like to see us focus on. I'll be meeting with groups of the leadership team and groups of teachers and parents to talk about what their priorities are, trying to incorporate all of the different thoughts together, and I'll be coming back to you with those likely on the 29th. At the Committee of the Whole, and if not, then on the 20th of December at the Committee of the Whole. As we did last year, we'll utilize these Committee of the Whole meetings as our working meetings for having budget discussions and bringing forward ideas and thoughts as we go through. The month of December, I'll begin having individual budget discussions with the principals and department heads and to listen to them about what requests they may have, ideas, thoughts, staffing, needs, resourcing, whatever they're looking forward to for the coming year. In January, we look forward to the governor's proposed state budget. We anticipate that typically by the end of the month in January. We'll have a couple of working meetings in February and March. We anticipate getting the Massachusetts House Ways and Means budget out sometime at the beginning of April. We will be posting our public hearing advertisement by the 30th. This calendar is worked up backwards by Jean. So we will be having our public hearing on May 8th, and so we'll start with the advertisement on the 30th. Sometimes in that time frame, typically sometimes right as the meeting's going on, we hear from the Senate about their Ways and Means budget. And then finally, we'll be having a meeting on the 8th. We'll have the public hearing and a meeting to follow up with that for the school committee to vote on the budget so that we can get the budget forward to the city in June in a timeline that the mayor can utilize it. I don't know if there are any questions on that. It's not a big shift or change in anything that we've done in past, but just letting you know that we're beginning the process, and you'll be hearing from me in the coming weeks to set up a time to talk about budget priorities.
Thank you so much for this timeline and for your constant reminders that the ESSER money will be running. out.
We
and
are,
need
yes.
to have
So,
serious
and I will be incorporating as part of that conversation, some of the impact and what that will look like for Beverly. We've, Jean and I and Aaron and Dot have been attending some workshops, really thinking about what the impact of the ESSER funding coming to an end will have for us and how what adjustments we'll need to make, so.
Okay. And I imagine Ms. Bergeron will be reaching out to school committee members to find
Yeah,
dates.
she'll send you out an opportunity to sign up for meetings as we go forward.
Thank you. Mayor Cahill.
Sure. Not a, well, first time I'm really looking at this, so my apologies, but if there was any thought to 2 budget discussions in January and not holding one on December 20th, that's something that I think I could get behind. I don't know if it would work, that there could be sufficient time between discussions to make the kind of progress that you'd be looking to make. Just a thought.
Yeah, I don't think this is a finite opportunity, but I think, and I do think that's something that we could do. I think we just historically aim for those committee of the whole meetings because they're designed as working meetings for the committee. The agenda doesn't have a few other things on it, but certainly we can have that consideration. So thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments for the superintendent on this topic? Okay.
All right, so I'll
Yeah.
pass it back over to you for.
Sure, yeah, the chair has quite a few things to bring forward today, and the first is the superintendent's 2023-24 goals and benchmarks. I wanted to report out that the negotiating subcommittee did meet last Wednesday, October 18th, 2023, in a remote fashion, and we had the opportunity to review the draft goals and benchmarks in a lot of detail with Dr. Churchek, and we voted to recommend this committee approve the goals and benchmarks, but I would like to offer Dr. Churchek an opportunity to give an overview and answer any questions the committee has before we make that formal motion.
All right, thank you very much. So you did receive in your documentation a longer description of the goals for 23-24, including 4 different goal areas. I'm just going to sort of walk through each one, give you a general overview of what the intent behind that goal is, and then I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have as we go forward. As you know, we'll be as part of the superintendent's evaluation, there's always goals to be reviewed. We are scheduled for November 1st. To do the formal evaluation on last year's goals, but I felt getting these in this time will make that time shorter when we go into the November 1st meeting. So the first goal that we have is a student learning goal. In the past couple of years, I've concentrated heavily on in the area of math. I really feel like it's timely for us to take a look at literacy. We've come forward to you in the past year. Our curriculum review in the area of literacy has been we've been undergoing it for the last 2 years. We're in our second year of implementation of a 3-year implementation of Wit and Wisdom in our K-4 classrooms. We are K-5 actually classrooms. We are piloting at the middle school some new literacy programs, and then finally we adopted some of the new literature at the high school as part of the ELA program at the high school. So, my hope is to spend the year doing observations, looking at data, looking at student performance. As you know, we have a data cycle in Beverly, so we'll have 2 to 3 data meetings in each of the grade levels. Just taking a look at progress and monitoring and measuring progress as we go through the year. That particular goal is around literacy. Do you want me to wait for questions on each one, or would you like me to do them all and then which works?
Why don't we have her go through all of them and see if they prompt questions? We can kind of put a pin in them. Thanks.
All right, thank you. The second goal is a professional practice goal. A professional practice goal is sort of looking at the superintendent as a continuous learner and looking at development and staying current. For the last couple of years, I've participated with the Department of Ed and their Ready professional development programs. This past spring, I was elected to the executive committee representing the North Shore Roundtable, so representing the superintendents from the North Shore region. And it's a really great opportunity for me to take a look even more broadly at the statewide executive committee at influencing and shaping educational policies at the state level. I will say it's been a great learning curve, and I have that opportunity to do that. So my goal for professional practice will be, my work on that committee throughout the year. There's the third goal is sort of the district improvement, is a district improvement goal. This is not anything new. I've been talking for the last few meetings about our work at the high school, well, actually grades 7 through 12. What are we doing in terms of pathways? How are we preparing our students for graduation and outcomes for post-graduation? This particular goal concentrates on those 4 areas that that we have been working in. Some of the data that's up there is data that's collected as a baseline as part of the MyCap work that we do. It just sort of gives a quick spotlight on what our students are thinking and where they think they're heading. You'll notice it doesn't add up to 100 because there are more than one categories that you can select. So, in terms of what that work will look like, continuing implementation of the MyCap. MyCap is our program that really engages student in their post-secondary planning. There's a continuum of activities that they work through, and that work is ongoing. I think I mentioned in the last meeting, the acquisition of a designation for innovative career pathways. That is taking a look at giving students coursework and experience in high demand industries: healthcare, environmental, and life sciences, and business and marketing. Those are the 3 particular pathways that Beverly is concentrating on this year. And that work, I know, is ongoing because they're submitting their grant tomorrow for their final approval. We received a planning grant for that, and we're moving forward in that work. The next step is a submission of application for early college designation. And I know that right now Beverly offers opportunities for dual enrollment. We offer opportunities for, kind of acquiring some of those college credits. But this is a formalized process of taking college level courses while still in high school. And the early college designation also allows Beverly opportunities to apply for further grants and other ways in which our students can engage in internships and all kinds of things. So we're working on that. That process will be ongoing throughout the year, hopefully acquiring that early college designation by the end of the year. And then finally, the review of our CTE expansion. We, as you know, have been working both with Essex Tech and with Salem High School with our After Dark program, but we're also looking at expanding our articulated courses within North Shore Community College and taking a look at other opportunities that we can to find practical skills and knowledge for students either in specific trades or industries. So those are sort of the action steps for that one. And then finally, a district improvement goal. I think I'm not sure if I spoke to this, but as you know, we've been looking deeply at math. We've done some curriculum review. We've done some curriculum adoption. And we believe there's still areas of growth for us in math. And one of through reflection, working with the instructional leadership team, we have kind of embarked upon an opportunity to do some visioning K-12, pre-K to 12 actually, because we know that mathematics, if we're jumping from one curriculum to another curriculum to another curriculum, it's sort of creating some more chaos as we go. So taking a look at articulating what does that vision look like from pre-K to 12, what connections do we need to make for students as they go through a progression of skills to kind of come to mastery in mathematics. We have done some partnering with an organization that's helping us through that visioning process, taking a look at developing some specific objectives for pedagogical and, finding ways to make sure that we're making sure that math is engaging, that kids see themselves as Ms. Montevecchi calls it, mathers, so that we're building a love of math and a competency within the area of mathematics. So that's an ongoing goal that we have for this year.
Thank you so much for that high-level overview and for your time last week where we had the opportunity to literally dive into every single line. I would like to open it up to the committee members who might have some additional questions or some specific. I saw Ms. Bisnick's hand.
I'm hoping that relative to goal number 1, the student learning goal, you can speak for a couple of minutes about I apologize, a little over-caffeinated today. At a previous meeting, or maybe it was an email you sent to all of us, you talked about how, as a district, our scores were not great and we were lower than we had been previously. Statewide, somebody might need to help me here. I think that statewide, we have quote-unquote fallen compared to some other schools. And in the meantime, the state has said you need to have a higher MCAS score to graduate.
Oh, no, 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 no. I
love
you're
that you
talking
can
about
figure
competency
out-
determination. So that's a diff. So first of all, we're bringing MCAS scores forward in a couple of weeks, but we have not fallen in our MCAS scores. What I think you're referring to is one of the measures when we look at some of our MCAS scores, we have been looking to revert back to where were we pre-pandemic versus now. I think that might be what you're talking about, and how we kind of have taken a different lens to, rather than saying, what was our score, how are we recovering? So I think that might be what you're referring to. Competency determination, they changed the cut scores. That's another, it's kind of conflating a couple of different things together, I think. But in general, our maths, I think our ELA scores, and I don't want to usurp your presentation for a couple weeks from now, but.
It depends on the grade level. We have some grade levels that, from the high level, we'll get into this when we do the whole presentation, but we have some grade levels that have had incredibly strong growth from last year's. Remember, we set a new foundation last year, but we can also compare it back to 2019. There are very few districts that are all the way back to where they were in 2019. Some are. We have not made it all the way back there, but we do have some grade levels that are getting very close. All but I think 2 have actually made more forward progress. So we're moving forward that way. It becomes much more complicated because we're looking at a whole grade level, but then we're also looking at our subgroups. And I will tell you that our work is in our subgroups because our aggregate is moving forward, but not all of our subgroups have made as strong a recovery as some of our, when you look at it in the whole aggregate.
And that may have been what I was referring to, the fact that some subgroups, I think it's we recognize that the pandemic had may have had a greater impact on some folks than others, but I would not say, so I didn't choose literacy because we're in the tank. So, and we're doing great. We're on the way to recovery. We had a strong year of building back last year and moving forward this year.
And we also have to remember we were in year 1 of the implementation of our new literacy curriculum. And so the scores are a little bit erratic, depending on the school and how the implementation was going, how many new young teachers you had versus how many more veteran teachers that had more of a foundational program. And that's why we always say implementation is a 3-year process. So we believe that we're on track. We have work to do, but we're not displeased with where we are.
And I would also just add that this goal speaks not only to just looking at MCAS scores, but rather we set a priority of representation within our curriculum, selecting literature that was representative for our students, something that was a little more relevant and more meaningful, without abandoning some of the strong classic literature that still needs to be part of the curriculum, right? So a lot of this goal is how are some of those decisions that we made around curriculum working when we're walking through classrooms? How are the tiered supports looking? So are we targeting some of those different subgroups as we go? What sorts of things are we creating for them? So I purposefully kind of tried to move away from MCAS as my only measure when I'm looking at this, because we believe we have writing work that's going on that we want to see continue to grow, and some things that aren't necessarily measured on MCAS. So and one of the key steps here is the early literacy screeners. So starting early, taking a look at early literacy screeners and making sure that we're communicating with families and parents what we see and what we find and what we can do if the early literacy screener is not where we would want it to be, or if there are signs that a student might be at risk, what do we need to do to ameliorate that so that we're providing those resources. So
Okay, so
I hope that addressed.
that was very helpful. I appreciate it. I think
Thank goodness Jot's
that's
here.
maybe going to help me reframe my question. Can you speak to the fact that the state has raised the MCAS score required to be able to graduate? And whether, especially given that our subgroups are not achieving where we'd like to see them achieve, kind of where that leaves us as a district? Because I put all of that into the student learning category. And if that's not, I'll use the word fair, relative to what I should be doing when I fill out your evaluation, I need to understand
Oh,
that.
we want to straighten that out right now. No, I'm only kidding. You're referring to, so the Department of Ed has a bar, right? So a number that they choose, and they for competency determination, and it's not whether or not you'll actually graduate, it's whether or not you're required to have an individual IPP, I think it's called, EPP, educational PP, whatever that stands for. And they have changes. So if the number used to be 224, it's now 230. But and so that's a piece of the data that we use when we're in our data cycles and when we're looking like how many students did require an EPP this year, how many will require it when the standard setting goes up, and needing to take a look at our tiered instruction. And it drives some of the instructional decisions that we make as we go through. But I don't know, I mean, those standards are set by DESE. We don't control those. So we just have to respond to them as they come forward. I think we're comfortable that we have a lot of the mechanisms in place that we need to have in place to make sure that MCAS isn't deterring our students from graduating. That's another piece of data that we look at. We don't have, for example, you have a resolution that you're all going to talk about around MCAS, right? That's not a particular Beverly problem. We don't have data that says that that's impeding our students from graduating. That's not a reason why our kids are not graduating or are not here. We have the measures in place to move them forward and to do what we need to do to help students be successful and meet that competency determination. I don't think we had anyone that didn't meet competency determination. That's the work that we do on that individualized level at the high school. MCAS is in sophomore year. You have the 2 years beyond to kind of, make sure that you get students the competency that they need to graduate. So those are a lot of different data points that get sort of commingled together, and how you utilize those is how you make good instructional decisions. And so that is the essence of the goal, what we need to do, making sure that we're taking a look at the district's performance data, looking at areas of strength, areas of need. What are we doing in terms of that? How are we providing differentiation? A really good example, I don't know if you remember a couple weeks ago, some of the students were talking about the advisory flex block. So that's new at the high school. That's a new opportunity for kids to get, during the school, extra time with teachers in subject areas that they need extra help. And so they built this schedule together where twice a week there's this flex block where students are able to kind of sign up, or teachers are able to kind of reach out and sign students up and say, oh no, I need you to come to my block during this period because I want to make sure that you have what you need in that period. So those are the kinds of tier 2, opportunities that we're trying to discover and make sure that we're able to provide. So that's just like one example of how we might do that.
Awesome, thanks.
Okay.
Do members have any other clarifying questions before we put a motion on the table? Not seeing any more questions. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the
So moved.
4 goals that have been outlined? Thank you,
Second.
Mayor Cahill. Thank you, Dr. Silva. Any more comments? All those in favor? 7-0. Thank you so much. And just as a reminder, as was mentioned a couple of times, the evaluations are individual contributions need to be to Ms. Bergeron by the end of the weekend, so essentially before Monday the 30th, so she can compile those and redistribute the aggregate to us. We will be adding that to our retreat agenda, and we will endeavor to keep the retreat rather brief, but to accomplish that evaluation as well.
And I would encourage, if you have any questions or if you are wondering about a piece of the evidence that's in there, please feel free to reach out. Just shoot me an email and I can maybe respond. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next item on our agenda is to look at resolution number 7. These are the 2023 resolutions for which Ms. Visnick and I will be attending the MASC-MASS Joint Conference, November 8th through 10th. Dr. Flaherty will be joining us, and the delegate or alternate will be in the room to vote. We agreed in our last meeting that we're amenable to all of the resolutions, save Resolution 7, that we wanted to have a more detailed discussion. Just as a reminder, this is related to MCAS, as Dr. Churchick just mentioned. It was submitted by the Framingham School Committee. And this one says, therefore, be it resolved that MASC urges Massachusetts to develop a wider, more consensus-built strategy for an evaluation system with meaningful input from legitimate stakeholders. That MASC urged the state legislature to launch a comprehensive evaluation to investigate the extent of biases pertaining to the MCAS testing and make these results public. That MASC urges Massachusetts to enact a moratorium on MCAS testing effective immediately, and that MASC urges Massachusetts to develop an alternative to the high-stakes MCAS test. There's a bunch of the preamble, which I assume was reviewed in your packet. And I don't know if we want to put a motion on recommending the delegate vote in favor of this, or to not vote in favor of this, or to abstain. If we have a motion, then we can have a discussion on the substance.
I'd like to make a motion to have the delegate vote in favor.
Okay. Is there a second?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick. We have a motion and a second to instruct the delegate to vote in favor of Resolution 7 related to MCAS. Floor is open for discussion. Mayor Cahill.
Thank you, Madam President. As I'm listening to the language, what strikes me is that it's not hard to support calling on or asking the state to conduct a process to try to find try to address any biases that are in MCAS and to find, what was the terminology, a more comprehensive or fairer or whatever system. Mm-hmm. But along with it is a moratorium. And so that's the part that, I would be in support of it if it said, hey, state, undergo a process to try to come up with a better system with a reporting date by such and such. But when you add into it an immediate moratorium on utilizing MCAS, then it's harder to support.
I saw Dr. Mackenzie DeFranz's hand first, and then I'll go to Ms. Visnick.
So when this was first presented to the body, my objection was over that particular language. I feel like a moratorium leaves it too open, and I am uncomfortable with the idea that we will not have quality assurance outside of MCAS being available. And I think that if there is language currently being floated in the ballot initiative about establishing a committee to do that, then I feel as though that committee should already be in place and have a deadline as well. So I'm not comfortable with the language because it doesn't indicate when and how the public will know what the alternative is to ending the moratorium and having some other way of ensuring students are getting a high-quality education.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick.
Well, I want to say two really different things, and so I'm going to itemize them, and then otherwise I'll assuredly forget one of the two. And one of the two is, when we talk about a moratorium, is it really that we just wouldn't administer the test anymore, or that it wouldn't be a graduation requirement? Because those are two very different things. And the second thing is relative to finding a more comprehensive, again, like Mayor Cahill, I think that's the terminology that's used there. I think that although any given person at this table might not be an educator for a living, I think it's incredibly important that we recognize that the test does not come anywhere near testing what is generally recognized as, I say generally, that's a bad word, what is fairly universally recognized as the different types of intelligences. So when you have a child who's incredibly artistic, MCAS isn't going to catch that at all. And, similarly, if someone is gifted if they have a language brain, maybe they do well on English because English is one language, but there is a standard in the field of education that says there are different types of intelligences, and MCAS doesn't come anywhere near testing even half of those intelligences. And so as a body, I think that's supposed to be representing all children, I think it's worthwhile for us to try to have that conversation. And if, in fact, as a body, we are unaware of those, unaware of that kind of theory of education, then well-accepted theory of education, then I think that maybe that's something else that we could do, for instance, in one of our retreats or something. It's incredibly, for me, I'm really very much in favor of saying MCAS should not be a determinant of whether we graduate or not. And we're the state has already bumped the number up, yet we know that we have, in essence, a huge an equivalent of a huge summer learning loss due to COVID. And so we're putting our children in this position of an incredible pressure to pass this test, which we know doesn't come close to testing all their intelligences. Yet we raise the score, and we know that any given child is behind because of COVID. So the totality of it is it's just a mess. It is an absolute mess, and I think that for that reason, although I also do not particularly like the words of this, maybe we as a committee can propose an amendment to change the words, but I am absolutely in favor of not using MCAS anymore for a graduation requirement.
Thanks. I'll return to Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza.
I agree on the merits about whether we are confident about how effective MCAS is in capturing the things we would like our graduates to know. I don't think there's agreement on whether or not that's true. What I think there is agreement about, though, is that some of these policies around standardization has been about ensuring that some children do not graduate with a very poor education because of long-standing disparities, and then we have no way of capturing that information either. So when we used to have No Child Left Behind disaggregating data, there were different responses to how we would understand what that data really means. Is it an issue of inequity, discrimination, funding disparities? So standardization was meant to say, we can assure our children are all going to learn certain types of material, whether they have an IEP, whether they live in the different zip codes we serve. And so this has been such a long-standing debate that I believe we also have people who have thought hard about what actually are good measurements. Perhaps they haven't come forward in Massachusetts to share that, but I don't think it is too much to ask that we pull from that expertise about what actually is good measurement of learning. But I fear that removing any measurement at all without anything to say, we know that seniors will know how to read, when in fact some do not, is a little scary for me. Because I wonder about the gap of time that will take, where we will have students graduating without the requisite skills. And I think whether it's a graduation requirement and whether it measures those things definitely is a good discussion to have. But I feel as though we need some kind of objective way to say, your diploma means something, and you will be ready for a post-secondary work or career. And I think we have the expertise in our country and our Commonwealth to figure that out. And I would feel much better if this particular resolution got at the desire to do that and to claim that information as also being important.
Ms. Visnick?
So do you have like an ideal amendment to that language, or are you just like, no, it's too far away and we can't get there from here?
So there is current proposed language in the ballot measure for the Thrive Act that says we would like to establish a committee. I think that falls short a little bit too, but it gets closer to we actually need to learn what is best. There are other states, I think, that are doing a good job, but we haven't had the time to sit down and really pull from their expertise. So there is language already out there that will be voted on that says, in lieu of having this, we'll also establish a committee that will help us get to what's better. And so I feel like perhaps supporting that language, that we want to have a study group, a working group, do that is great. But I am, again, uncomfortable with the open-endedness of when and how that might happen for our young people who I think if they are being underserved, we would miss that. And that's where the concern is about the open-endedness about the time.
Dr. Churchek?
Hi, sorry, thank you. I appreciate you bringing forward. There are actually two bills that are pending, two bills that are forward. And from the Association of School Superintendents, they're sort of supporting the promise. The Promise Commission, the creation of a Promise Commission. That it's a similar bill to the Thrive Act, but it lays out some timelines, and it talks a little bit about an 11-member commission to kind of, it has a few more specifics about what that makeup might look like and what timeline we might want to hear back from them. Again, pending, they're both pieces of legislation that are pending, and so I appreciate you bringing that forward. And you know, I mean, I think there's work going on, and one bill is a little more restrictive than another. So just pointing out that there's two opportunities for us to be considering some of those things.
I appreciate that because it sounds like that went the step further in saying what the timeline is, because I think there is urgency around timeline because we know that the objective initially, at least, was to make sure that students were not going to be underserved. So it's good to hear that there's some other thoughts out there about that.
Mayor Cahill?
Thanks, Madam President. It's okay if nobody has the answer to this one, but two pieces of legislation. Do we know that steps have been and/or are being taken to put one or the other or both on the ballot as initiative questions if the legislation isn't, if one or the other of those aren't passed?
I only know that the petitions have gone forward. I can't say that I don't know where and how. I know they have support and that there is two different bills that are going forward. I don't know exactly where it is in the process, but you know, I guess I speak to this that I know that there are bills that they both were proposed last year, so they've been in the hands of the legislature for a while, and so you know, I know that just from my work that we know that we've looked at both, and in the one in particular that MASS is advocating, you know, and putting their support behind is the bill that is, you know, kind of establishes and regulates that Promise Commission. So
I would just add a point of information. As of this weekend, people had petitions still out in the public, and we're seeking people to sign at grocery stores especially, and Target. Anyway, Mayor Cahill.
So there's a question kind of on the table, right? Is there something that we might propose as an amendment that we could get behind together? I don't know if this is it, because there's definitely a difference of opinion around the state and maybe among us as to whether MCAS should exist or should not exist. I would say that I could get behind an amendment that did two things. Put a definite end time on the work of this, whatever work would happen with the recommendation, and delete the moratorium language, because I wouldn't want to see MCAS eliminated until something was ready to take its place. But as I said, that may not work for other people here, so.
Ms. Visnick.
So that was the first thing I said. I am unclear. The moratorium, does that mean we're just removing it as a graduation requirement? That doesn't mean you have to stop administering it. Doesn't mean you have to stop using the data in your own internal meetings, right? And on top of that, I'll go back to something I asked Dr. Chirocek probably a half hour ago. If a child takes MCAS in 10th grade and doesn't hit their scores, that you had 3 letters you used.
EPP.
So what is,
It's currently an alternative to meet that graduation requirement. But it's done now through your coursework and through so it basically you create an individualized plan for a student, and then that student has to meet the graduation requirements via their coursework and demonstrate mastery by successfully completing core courses that are identified by the Department of Ed.
right, so my confusion is, why are so many people so fired up about saying, let's not use MCAS as a graduation requirement when there is this alternative?
So I would sort of speak to the fact that we're a strong suburban school district, and we are very successful in understanding how to do that and engaging in the work that needs to be done, and that maybe there are less resourced districts that are not as well resourced and able to do that and fulfill that for all of their students, and a higher number of their students don't make it through that process. I can confidently say in Beverly, ours do. We know how to do that, and we know how to work that. I believe that there are other places where the students aren't as successful in that process.
And if let's say I'm a potential employer, do I see a difference in the resume of a child who graduated because their MCAS scores were good enough versus somebody who come out with an EPP? I love that head nod back there.
Is that no? I don't. I was going to say no, but I was also going to maybe say I might want to double check that, but I don't believe that. I believe the only difference you ever would see in a high school is if they received a certificate of completion, which means that they didn't meet the high school graduate requirements. Those are students that take MCAS alt, or that they aren't able to kind of make that level of mastery in grade level standards.
Okay.
Microphone.
Sorry, I wanted to ask about how else the MCAS affects students. So perhaps on the diploma side, we may not see it, but at least in my household, I hear a lot about MCAS scores being tied to scholarships and different kinds of college access. So I feel like we would also need to know how that would be impacted. What I see here in the language says, and I'm reading it verbatim, it's not what I think is in the ballot initiatives, which is different. But this says, the MASC urges Massachusetts to enact a moratorium on MCAS testing effective immediately.
Yep.
So that would be no testing. Right. I think what I'm hearing you say is, I don't want the testing to result in a graduation determination. And what some of the ballot initiatives are saying is, go ahead and use MCAS as growth indicators, right? Like use it as feedback, but not as a high stakes restriction.
Exactly.
So so this language actually does not match what I think is a little more palatable, which is we have something. It may not be great, but it tells us something about growth, and it doesn't completely dismantle some of the other ways MCAS has been used without having something for that too, like applications for scholarships in different schools. So I think this, to me, this language is just the most restrictive in what we're trying to do, and that's the challenge as well, because it says no testing.
Okay.
I have 2 points. I have a piece of data that I've found in the paperwork that I'm looking at. So on average, 700 students per year in the state of Massachusetts do not receive diplomas because of the MCAS graduation requirement. So that's and so what MASS, the promise bill that they're supporting, is really in favor of bringing together interested stakeholders to discuss designing multiple pathways to competency determination, rather than eliminating competency determination altogether. And the approval of the ballot questions, that this would allow us to kind of move in that direction. And I had one more, to your question, Mayor, where the petitions sit right now. Petition filers must collect 74,574 registered voter signatures by December 6th. And then the Office of the Attorney General has to verify those in January of '24. And then if certified, they would send the petition for the legislature for consideration by May of 2024. So just in the timeline of where those bills sit right now, that's where they are.
I saw Ms. Robinson's hand.
Thank you. So you answered part of my question. 700 students in Massachusetts?
So I have a piece of data from MASS that says that one of the reasons they're in support of revisiting multiple pathways for competency is because there are 700 students that didn't receive graduation diplomas because they couldn't meet competency. That does not, and there's an asterisk, that doesn't reflect students who drop out. So that there's, and I don't know whether students drop out because they don't think they're going to pass the test, but that 700 are the students that were denied diplomas because they didn't meet competency determination in Massachusetts, in the state of Massachusetts.
I bet you can guess what my question is then. How
don't.
many in Beverly?
0. Yeah, none. We have not had a student not. They work very hard at that.
Forever? Like
I'd need
in the
Bethany
past
here,
5 years?
so in full disclosure, Bethany Splancy is the person who's in charge of competency determination for us in Beverly, and she works very hard at making sure. Now, we do have students who graduate with certificate of completion.
That's what I
At a
meant.
team meeting, there are decisions that are made that they take an MCAS alt. That's a different set of data. That's a different set of circumstance than students who are in, the general core curriculum program and they don't reach competency. And I can have her, I will ask her that. So I don't ever want to say a piece of data that's inaccurate. But, I know that when I asked her about this one, she said, well, we didn't have any trouble last year. Everybody got through. So that's not a scenario that we're working with in our district right now.
Yeah, and I think I think it would be helpful to hear from, like, how challenging it is for some of our special ed students to get through. I think that'd be an important thing for us to hear.
I think that would be a great, I'm happy to have, maybe you can have curriculum and instruction, Bethany, come forward. She is our expert on competency determination and how we work through that, so.
Mayor Cahill.
Thanks, Madam President. That 700 number just doesn't really mean anything without the stories behind the
Correct,
numbers,
it doesn't,
right?
but it's just, it's just a piece of
Right.
data. Like, I wanted to kind of frame it a little bit and put it in context. So, because I think Ms. Visnick asked specifically, well, why are so many people upset about it? And because there are 700 students who don't do it across Massachusetts, but not
So-
necessarily in Beverly.
So I don't know how many seniors there are every year in Massachusetts public schools. I don't know what the attendance records are of those 700 that didn't pass. I have no idea anything behind just I shouldn't say random, that's not the right word, but a number that just doesn't give us much beyond. I think I'm hearing that the students for whom the certificate of, what's the term?
Completion.
Completion is the pathway. Probably that profile of student isn't in that 700 generally. I'd like to think not, because these are kids in many instances who we're really working closely with in finding that certificate of completion pathway. So you'd like to think that there aren't kids falling by the wayside in that 700 through that, but I don't know. And at any rate, it's got limited value to even think about the number, right? So.
Okay, so we have presently a motion on the table to recommend that the delegate vote in favor as written. Are we prepared to have an amendment, or?
Well, let me ask. I suggested that an amendment could be to put an end date on the study. And I'm fine with the thought that the state could come up with a better, set of measurements than the existing MCAS. So some end date, but I would not, my proposed amendment would not discontinue the use of MCAS as a graduation requirement until something is ready to take its place. So I'm not sure if that's something that people want to support here or not.
I would support that. I agree that not having something in place doesn't really serve the children. Having testing metrics and measures to see how they've gone through the process, and without that, it doesn't. It's a disservice to the kids.
I'm not ready to make the amendment yet, but I can get behind the sentiments. I think something that hasn't been discussed in this, which is part of the larger conversation, is the accuracy of the testing, and maybe it's student fatigue, maybe it's, oh, this doesn't really matter. It's not really a reflection of me as a student. It doesn't measure my intelligence. It's maybe more of a reflection on my teachers or my district. I think this is a really complicated issue. I think that some of the ballot initiatives have really put a lot more thought into it, and I almost feel like if the delegate were to get up and speak and just make let's add a December 31st, 2025 date, and let's strike this one paragraph. I've been to the conventions a lot, and I don't think that would get any traction.
I'll get slayed.
It would just fall by the wayside, and I wonder if this committee has any more strong or compelling differences that it might want the delegate to bring forward, because a simple edit to the one that's presented to us, it's just going to be lost in the ether when it goes to the delegate committee. Ms. Visnick.
I also, from experience, really, although I appreciate your sentiment, do not wish to stand up and make a speech that would sound quote unquote righteous about what we would like to see, right? Because some people do stand up there and take a lot of time to hear themselves talk. So I don't want to be that person. I really don't want to be that person. And so I think there's a delicate balance there in between having very specifics. This is my amendment, and it either gets voted up or down, versus this, ideally we'd like something so much better. And maybe what this body agrees upon is to send me to the podium, goodness gracious, help me, and say, we are more in line with the ballot initiatives, and just a statement of fact, right, and walk away.
Dr. Trocek.
They're not an option to just vote no.
Voting no, you just sit in the little silent minority. And so I guess what I'm encouraging this body to think is that even if we don't all agree on what the exact thing is we want, we know what we don't want, and maybe we can make a statement to that effect versus try to wordsmith something that's, it's Framingham, so it's probably going to get steamrolled right through. Honestly, they have a really strong contingent that they bring with them, and they have a lot of the challenges that Dr. Trocek has mentioned about being able to help their students through the EPP. And so I guess I'm just saying another option rather than amending and wordsmithing is to instruct the delegate to just do something different. We have that option. Mayor Cahill.
Could I ask, since I haven't been, and you two have been for a few years in a row.
Do you want to go?
I am unfortunately unavailable those couple of days. Trouble over there. So honestly, can you share a little bit of the sense, the climate that's in that room around MCAS? Is it a strong sentiment that kind of, is it a room, You know, the mask members who are most active and most vocal, is it a group that tends to want to remove MCAS as a graduation requirement? And that's kind of a starting point for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think it's hard to characterize. There are definitely loud people that don't follow parliamentary procedure. And there are a lot of points of order and a lot of, you be quiet now, please. But I think that there is a strong contingent that challenges the status quo and wants to do better by our students. And the people that sign up to be the delegates are generally advocates. They're mostly the people that have drafted these or have drafted them in previous years. And I think that there would be a strong proponent for people that are seeking to end MCAS, but they maybe didn't put a lot of details into this in hopes that it just sort of passes.
I think that's a fair, and I think, like I'll add on to that, there are people who not only don't follow parliamentary procedure, but truly, I'll use the word grandstand. It's a painful potentially 3 hours of sitting there, when really it should be much simpler. There's a motion on the table. Are there amendments? Yes, no, vote them up and down. Let's go. Yeah.
I think one of the valuable pieces of this that we're missing here at this table is generally the people that have brought this resolution to the resolutions committee and gotten it in our booklets. They generally have an opportunity to introduce it and to provide the anecdotes, the background, the personal stories. Sometimes they bring up, a student or, make a scenario of why what we're currently doing doesn't work and why they need this advocacy. So, these are just sort of the whereas and therefore be it resolved. But there is much more of a plea that's made before we get into the nitty.
I think that it would be like super cool if we could pose to the person who brought this particular one forward, why isn't the EPP good enough for you? Why are you proposing that we stop doing the testing? Or even if we back that off and say, all right, we're still going to do the testing so we have the data, but we're going to stop using it as a requirement for graduation. You could imagine that might be, even though I respect what both of you said about we shouldn't stop that without having something else there. You can imagine that would be a little less objectionable than just stop testing altogether, right? So if we kind of look at a gradation of options, why are you guys saying totally stop it when there is this alternative? I would love to ask the person who brought this forward that question, but we're not going to have that opportunity there.
Can I just clarify one thing? There is a bar over which you have to get to qualify to do an EPP. So it's not a given. It's not anyone. If you get a 0, then you're not. You have to meet a certain threshold, and then the EPP will be allowed. So the 700 students that were probably never met that minimum threshold. So there is I just want to clarify. It's not every single person. You just can do the EPP instead. You have to have a certain score and an EPP. So just to let you know that.
Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza.
I don't know that anything short of what you said would make me happy, which is to have a great test and have it be all the ways we can measure for children's success. But I'm wondering whether we could say something to the effect of a moratorium on it being a graduation requirement, but requiring that it still be used to assess student learning so that we don't miss opportunities where it could be about instruction or resources. And should there not be an alternative that's acceptable by X date, that it will essentially resume as a testing requirement for graduation? I'm just wondering if we give a deadline, but also say we're going to revert to the MCAS should we get 3 years down the road and we have nothing else. I don't know if that's even an option.
I just want to say from my personal view, removing the graduation requirement gives the students absolutely no carrot, no incentive to actually sit at the tests that's being proctored by our educators who we love. We can't force them to try. And I think I have anecdotal evidence that some students don't understand and will just click through to see who can get to the end first. And so I do worry about, removing it as a graduation requirement. In an ideal world, that would be the perfect, stopgap until we have a better test. But I do worry that if we're initiating or administering the test, that it has some sort of weight for our students. Ms. Visnick. Oh, sorry.
What's our motion? What's our current motion?
Our current motion that's not amended yet is to vote yes as written. Mayor Cahill.
Can I ask a question, maybe of Dr. Trocheck? There are these two pieces of legislation. Do you remember when the last time was that the state took a hard look at MCAS, and wasn't it MCAS 2.0 or whatever it was?
Yep, there's been, yep,
How long ago was that?
at least, I was a principal then, so it was at least 12 years ago,
mean,
15 years ago. So I think I think there's a lot of challenges. One of them is taking a look at MCAS. One of them is which body is going to regulate MCAS, right? So you have a Board of Education, you have the legislation, you have, a ballot question. So there's a lot of people trying to weigh in on what should be an educational decision by educational experts. The problem is trying to, and I think what I keep hearing, I think you are all kind of in agreement with, we want to have high standards, and we want to make sure that kids meet the standards. We don't believe that the current, as it exists, MCAS probably is the perfect tool for that. And so what are the multiple pathways to measure, a broader experience and competency level of a student going forward? I know there's a lot of people that are getting behind one bill or the other. The real opportunity here is to kind of at that comprehensive look, a commission to take a comprehensive look. And that's really where I feel like the right answer will come from. Even the shift from Park, well, first of all, we had the standards change, so then we all had to revisit the assessments that we had. We had to adapt our assessments to match the standards. And then we had two competing sets of publishers who were coming out with, and it was sort of a battle of the publishers as to which one was going to be adopted. There's so many intricacies in this whole thing, and so much political and persuasive bodies that are weighing in that it makes it challenging. I don't know if that helps.
I'm trying to go somewhere with this. If I could ask you a couple other quick questions. Remind me how many subjects are tested in part of the graduation requirement?
Currently, 3 subjects are tested. There's a pilot beginning this year for social studies, so there will be 4. But
So
right
it's
now, is there
ELA
a
ma-
CD for science? I don't think there's a CD for science. It's just math and English for CDs. Correct. Only 2 subjects are for the competency determination, but currently science is also tested, and social studies is being added as a test this year.
So 30 years ago, when ed reform was passed and MCAS became part of the landscape, we were ELA math. And 30 years later, we're still just ELA math. Okay.
Science is coming in. I think it's on the horizon. It's already been identified.
As a part of the requirement.
As a part, but I think not till 25 or 20. I believe it's 27.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Okay. So, okay on that. Thank you. And then, do you believe as educators that the state has gotten the curriculum frameworks finally where they need to be? Because if what we're testing is the wrong set of frameworks, then we're not there yet either.
That's a big question.
Well, see, when I was in the I'll tell you why. Just when I was on the education committee for several years when I was in the legislature, and I remember being part of, sticking my nose in on the social studies frameworks, and it was, I don't want to exaggerate, but it was all white male Northwestern European. Boom, that was social studies.
Yep.
And that was wrong. And that just, so
So there's been a lot of work done on that. I believe that that we do customarily go back and revisit and look at standards. I feel like, the work, and in addition, we don't just, we have the opportunity as a local school district to look at those standards and make sure that we're adopting our curriculum. That's the work that Dr. Flaherty's been doing over the last couple of years, looking at curriculum adoption, looking at making sure that we have lenses that we use. We use a culturally responsive rubric for any materials that go into our classrooms. So the work is ongoing, and we are doing that. Do I believe MCAS hits the mark on all of that? I believe there could be a great deal of improvement in the assessment itself, but again, I actually believe I was around when there was no measure, and that was terrible, right? We can't have nothing. So I believe that we have a need for something. And so I guess you use what you have now. We supplement it with district design measures and all of the other things that we can do.
I hear you. And I don't want to be the reason we're here till 10, so let me just finish and say, I feel like whatever voice we can collectively agree on, we should put behind, hey, governor, hey, legislature, let's get the process rolling on finding, a better set of collectively what we're going to test. And I'm fine with somebody calling the vote, and I'll vote against what's on the table. That's okay. I don't mind being in the minority on that. Your thought that something a little more nuanced out of us could give Mrs. Visnick the chance to say something meaningful at the podium. Do you, Madam President, think you have an amendment to pull out of that thinking? Because I'd be happy to.
I do not. There's a lot of people at the table who put a lot more thought into this, and we will have our retreat next week if someone wants to draft something, and we could add it to the agenda before I post it tomorrow, to just have a look at that. If there's someone that wants to volunteer, I see your hand, Dr. Silva. Microphone.
Rejecting what is stated and adding that, we're rejecting this, but looking for this. Wouldn't that be motivation for there to be something that is more aligned with what we're thinking rather than, would that be the proper motivation?
Okay, so the way this works is that this verbatim is put on the screen, and track changes is turned on in a Word document, and people come up to the podium, they make a proposal for an amendment, it gets poorly typed in, then they call a vote, it gets a second, then they call the vote, and then it gets deleted, basically, unless it passes. But it is not an efficient process, and I think my suggestion was that maybe one of us could craft a statement that our delegate could read at the podium, not necessarily wordsmithing this, have the instruction to vote no if it talks about a moratorium, for instance, like maybe change our motion that's on the table to vote yes to, so long as it talks about eliminating testing, the delegate will vote no, and leave the rest of the discussion to the mayor's point, maybe doing advocacy with our legislature and the governor's office as well. So we have a motion on the table to tell the delegate to vote yes. We can amend that, we can withdraw that, we can table our decision on how to instruct the delegate to our November 1st meeting, but I would ask that some actual proposal come forward of what we want to instruct the delegate to say. And I need a volunteer. It's not me, because I don't know what to say. Ms. Robinson.
So I was the one who asked to vote yes. I just want to put a few things out there. And thank you for everything that everybody said, because I think it's all very important. And everybody's voice has been, I've listened to everything. So I just believe that it's time that we put graduation back in the hands of our educators who know these students and who have taught them for years, and not having such an important thing such as graduation could actually be based on one test. I think that standardized tests are not, they're going, if for college, for example, so many colleges are test optional. I just think that they're going by the wayside, and for such a high stakes test, whoever they are who change, like who actually make the changes to the test, it changes a lot. And teachers have to quickly pivot and figure out like how to teach to teach to a new test. And the idea that they raised the stakes at a time when it was just not the time to raise the stakes for the class of 2026, I think it was a shame. And, MCAS, I'm thinking legacy, park, back to MCAS 2.0. It's just, I don't think whoever they are have ever gotten it right. And Massachusetts is only one of 8 states that have a graduation test, like a test that for graduation. I don't think it's necessary. And that's all I have to say with respect to everything that everybody else has said here.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Ms. Visnick?
I just wish to acknowledge that I'm not a teacher for a living, and so I want to throw that right back at you and say I respect that you're a teacher, and that, I think that's an important perspective, and I've said multiple times, one of the great things about this group is I don't know that, as a general rule of thumb, any of us are going to be hanging out with each other and going out for a beer or whatever, but we bring really different perspectives to the table, and I think that's what makes us as a board really strong. So I appreciate that.
The chair reminds everyone, we have a motion on the table to adopt or to instruct our delegate to vote yes as written.
Madam President, how would this assembled group feel if I suggested we table it until our retreat? Or would people prefer to have completed the conversation tonight?
I have a lot more on tonight's agenda, and I know the lights turn off at 10, but I feel like simply adding it to our November 1st agenda, which is going to address our calendar, the superintendent's evaluation, for which I know we all owe Ms. Bergeron our feedback for the aggregate, it might make November 1st a very long evening because the delegate will be voting on the 8th.
I'm also okay with us just voting now, but it was your suggestion a couple minutes ago.
Yes, but only if someone will volunteer to write an alternate, like what the delegate should state at the podium. If we don't want to say yes or no entirely to this, I think we need to have someone bring a proposal, much like we did resolutions ourselves.
I see that, okay.
Yeah. Ms. Visnick?
How about we table to November 1st, and at that meeting, if nobody brings something forward to write, then we vote up or down. No more discussion, just like, okay. And if somebody has time to do that, because I just saw at least one of these happen, right? And which is not a thing where I'm from, by the way. Yeah. But
Okay.
that way, if someone is really inspired and feels strongly about it and they want to write something, otherwise we just vote yes or no at the November 1st meeting.
Seems fair. So we will table this resolution decision until November 1st. Motion to table, all those in favor? Just trying to cover my Robert's rules. Thanks. 7-0. Wow, where were we on the agenda? Okay, so we'll see that November 1st. For policy review, Ms. Visnick gave a great overview during the finance and facility, and she also shared with us at the regular school committee a little bit more about the policy work and how each of the subcommittee chairs or the chair of the whole committee will be providing a track changes version. And in your packet, you did receive the track changes for committee of the whole policy for review. They're sort of out of order. I think I put them alphabetically, whereas I'm going to try to share those. It should come up in a second. There we go. I had put them in, oh, I guess I did put them in this order. Okay. So the track changes indicate where MASC has recommended a difference in what we currently have in our policy. So for all of these, I took Beverly's adopted policies and I've inserted any changes. In this particular case, they also, I used some italices because we had some language that MASC does not have, reminding everyone that these policies are from sample MASC policies and from Beverly's own legacy policies. And so I just wanted to highlight that we, in our previous version, our current version, had stated that we would make a school year calendar vote by our regular February school committee meeting. And so I didn't necessarily want to put that in strike through, but I did need to highlight that that's not part of the MASC policy. So that's just the difference on this first one here. We have the opportunity to make no changes, so we can say we just reviewed it and we don't want to accept any of these changes. We can agree to accept them. We can accept them with caveats. We can make friendly amendments on things to keep and not keep. So in this case, the other difference from our current policy is that MCAS removes this whole section about absences for religious observances and adjusting the school calendar to 180 days. So with these, we have many options to put a motion on the table, and I don't pretend to know what the body's thinking, so I would ask if there was someone that had a motion they wanted to make. We can start there. Mayor Cahill.
Madam President, I have a question, so you want me to make a motion first?
You can ask clarifying questions first.
How have we done the last few years with the adoption of our annual calendar? Have we done it by February every year? We have.
We and
Changed it like 6 times, will we come forward with that original calendar?
I think
Well,
summer
no, but
camp,
that's what I'm
summer
asking.
camps
Have-
open up and parents want to know and they want us to
Right,
have-
I'm just
yeah.
asking, I just remember each of the last few years, we've taken a little bit of time with it. Have we finally approved it by the February regular meeting each of the years?
I would-
Just
Is
says
that
this-
attainable?
It
Is
just
that-
says the superintendent shall submit to the school committee for adoption by February.
Oh, gotcha, okay. All right,
you know what I mean?
Thank you, I didn't, I was only reading
Yeah.
the red. So the mask proposal takes all that out and just says annually.
Right.
But we like that it says February regular meeting because that keeps us on target so that families know early enough.
Okay.
So I'm going to make a motion
Okay.
that we accept the mask language, except that we accept, ACC, the mask language, except, EXCEPT,
Keep the
keep
italics.
that italicized language that's ours.
And strike the part that they don't have?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And
Our contract with teachers is for 184 school days, so we'd have a little trouble on that 85th day.
Well,
to
Can
have
Okay.
I read that differently. I thought that was the snow day piece.
It's 100.
85 and then.
No,
and
it's
then
100, so our contract with teachers is 184 days currently.
Okay.
And the calendar that's 100, that doesn't matter, it's not the.
Our
snow day.
calendar assumes 5 snow days. and then if
Oh,
we don't
you
use
say
them-
that's
yeah,
not for
that's how I
school?
read it too. I
That-
thought
that's-
Oh,
how
all right,
I'm
I
reading it.
apologize, I might be wrong, I just want to make sure that we're clear that we.
180 student days plus 5 snow days.
That's how I was reading
Oh, all
it,
right,
too.
okay.
It's about the built-in snow days that,
Because our calendar is 184.
No, right. It's
It's only 184. When you go from the first day, Donna counts out 184
plus
days.
the snow days, so 189.
Counting but, right.
Yeah. I think this is talking about student days.
Okay.
So the mayor has made the proposal to keep our italicized language, add the additional MASC language, and to remove the extraneous piece of our policy.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick. Are there any comments or concerns with that proposal? Ms. Coelho?
I don't have any concerns, just a comment. So if you did look in paragraph 3 on the bottom there, the first, in section 3, it does say for a minimum of 180 days. So then if you add the 5 snow days, that's where you're getting the 185 days from.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, and so these changes would come back for another reading to this committee, so you can think on it. So we'll vote at this moment to move forward with the changes. All those in favor? So nice, 7-0, okay. The next policy that was in your packet is GCJ, professional teacher status. In many of the MASC suggestions, they have changed pronouns. As the chair, consistency in our policies is one of the things I strive for, and we have generally put the the Arabic numbers next to spelled out numbers and subject-verb agreement. MASC also removed one of the references to Mass General Law. I would look for a motion to either approve or reject these edits.
I move to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Cahill. Thank you, Dr. Silva. Are there any comments or suggestions? All those in favor? And we'll move that forward to a second reading. Next, we should have GBGE, Golf Bravo, Golf Echo. And this is a policy for domestic violence leave, and presently, I don't believe this is in the Beverly Policy Manual, so we're bringing it forward for consideration. Oh, actually, I take that back. No, this one was in our policy. However, MASC has recommended we remove all of the definitions that we put into our policy and refer back to the law so that we don't have to keep up with the variety of changes that happen in the legal definitions. I apologize. And again, they've changed pronouns and done subject-verb agreements. Looking for a motion
So moved.
to approve the changes as recommended by
As recommended, right?
MASC. Got something on my brain. And seconded by Kim Coelho. Thank you. I'm not sure, why I confused those two. Are there any comments or questions on this change? Pronouns, Arabic numbers, and definitions. All those in favor? We will bring this forward for a second reading. Okay, family medical leave is our next one. One of the changes MASC has recommended for consistency's sake is to strike school system and talk about the school district. They've also done some capitalization just to formalize the district. They've also suggested we remove the FMLA Act of 1993 cross-reference or legal reference, just for housekeeping.
I move approval.
Okay, Mayor Cahill moves to approve these changes. Is there?
Second.
Thank you, Kim Coelho. Any comments? All those in favor? We'll bring that again for a second reading. Next one is Golf Bravo India, GBI, and this is related to staff participation in political activities. We actually had miscategorized this as the code GBGB, which actually doesn't exist. I'm not sure how we had that creative typo. It should be GBI. So one correction on the top is to give it the correct file acronym. Again, they are changing the pronoun And they are adding the clarity from the law, which is also referenced, that public employees are prohibited under statute from soliciting funds for political campaigns. Sorry, that relates to while they are working and in their relationships with school personnel or students during the working day. So, again, this is fixing the label and adding that statement and the reference to MGL. Mayor Cahill.
I would move approval and a correction to the misspelling of the word activities in the title. Thanks.
Okay. Wow. Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion on the table to approve with a spelling correction as well.
Second.
Okay, Mayor Cahill and Karen Robinson, thank you. Are there any other comments? I
have a
see your hand, Ms.
question.
Bisnick. Yes.
So I think in general, and we're going to get to some other policies that are, you can't do this versus we do this, like the audit procedure. We shall audit at whatever, right? So this is you can't do something, but then it doesn't talk about what happens if it happens. So wherein lies or where are the teeth to enforce this policy or any policy that says you won't do this, you can't do this?
Well, to your first point about many of the policies say you can do this, I think this policy, the way it was drafted and the way we've had it adopted, does say that the committee recognizes employees of the school system have the same fundamental rights and responsibilities and privileges as all citizens, and that they are able to campaign and run for elective offices. However, in connection with campaigning, an employee will not use school systems and facilities, equipment, supplies, discuss their campaign with school personnel or students during the workday, use time during the workday for campaigning purposes, and they are prohibited from soliciting funds for their political campaign in those situations. And it says, under no circumstances will students be pressured into campaigning for any staff member. I think this gives the superintendent what she needs for disciplinary action. I don't think that our job as a school committee is to say what the employee action would be. I don't know if there's campaign rules within Mass General Law 55, if there's something in Mass General Law or even in our, yes. Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza.
Sure. I believe that the last line feels like it's missing the clarification on if ever or under what circumstances. So it seems like maybe what we're trying to say is prohibited under state law from soliciting funds for political campaigns during,
No.
or is it ever? That's the part I'm not sure about.
It's a blanket prohibition under state law.
Okay, so if you're campaigning and you're a public employee, you are not permitted to solicit campaign funds.
Can I tell a fun story?
Yes, please.
When I was a middle school teacher and I ran for state representative, I couldn't ask for money. It was my favorite campaign ever because everybody on my campaign committee had to ask for the money.
So you can, okay, I think that's why I'm confused, because usually
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
there is some fundraising, so I was confused about how one would do that. So you would have to essentially have a proxy,
A proxy.
it sounds like,
Yes.
rather than you
And
specifically.
the treasurer is separate from the
Okay.
campaign, from the elector.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
Does it
Thank
make
you.
sense to designate that in this?
Designate.
Does it make,
We generally try not to rewrite law in our policies, so we reference them. So I don't know that we necessarily want to say that, but
I know I made the motion, but I'm tripping over the word citizens. Certainly, you can't run for office if you're not a citizen, but you can campaign if you're a non-citizen resident. And we most certainly have non-citizen residents on staff in our community. So I wonder if the right thing to do here to be accurate would be to say, as other citizens, and non-citizen residents? I don't know.
Do you want a / residents? Is that a friendly amendment to add the word?
As citizens/residents? I mean, in order to run for office, you've got to be a U.S. citizen.
And a
But in
registered
order
voter.
to campaign and help, you don't.
Right.
I don't know what the right use of language is, but it just probably should try to clarify that.
Okay.
Yes, I would say if we add / residents, because
Okay.
the point of this sentence is the fundamental civic responsibilities and privileges. So residents, non-citizen residents have a set of fundamental civic responsibilities and privileges,
Right.
distinct and separate from those who are citizens. Namely, can you run, can you not run?
I think the chair is
So maybe
adding
just
that friendly amendment.
citizens/residents?
Citizens / residents. Yep.
Did you have your hand up?
No, well, I was just going to say, in reference to something that you had said, I think, remember that policy is what we rely on that we can point to say, I'm not telling you can't do this, our policies tell you that you can't do this, and having it in policy makes it easier for that conversation for a lot of people too. So just, that you asked if there was retribution or, whatever, discipline, but teeth. But for us, that's what the policy represents to us. It's really what we go to with parents, with everyone to say, these are our policies. So it's not subjective.
Okay, are any other comments or amendments? We have a motion on the table to accept the changes with the friendly amendment to add / residents next to the word citizens as highlighted.
I wish to make one more comment.
Okay.
You said we don't generally repeat things that are in general law, and we're talking about this line, but I think that a lot of people around this table were surprised, and so I think it is valuable to leave it in here because it is surprising. I'm,
It's a nuance. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. All those in favor of moving this forward to a second reading? Thank you, 7-0. And the next one is Bravo Charlie Bravo, BCB. Committee member conflict of interest. For those who've served on the committee for a while, you might remember we've gone back and forth a bit on this one. MASC actually was just looking for our changes on pronouns. And that's what's reflected here. I also know the superintendent has, requested some clarity because we do have some Beverly influence in this version as well, because of our, I don't know what the real reason is, but because of our interpretations or our desire not to conflict with nepotism laws, we've very specifically spelled out some of our, if we have an employee prior to someone being elected, they can stay, but if there is a hire to be happening after an election, they cannot be hired for the school committee and the superintendent. So there's that, but MASC did not have any recommendations for that, so I just wanted to point that out. Oh, and that also BCB is our version, where the sample policy is actually a code of ethics, which is actually quite different from our policy. So let me just remember, this might not be one that we have an answer tonight, and we can send it to whomever we wish, whether it's to another committee of the whole, whether it's to the superintendent or our solicitor, our lawyers, if we want to put any more thought into this, or we can simply adopt the pronoun changes this evening. Or not adopt them, but move them to a second reading with just the pronoun changes. Lots of options. We have lots of options. Ms. Bisnick,
Does there have to be a motion for me to ask my question?
is it a clarifying question?
Maybe.
Okay.
I'm wondering if the paragraphs on nepotism, if you could think about a versioning numbering system. Has this, I would like to see the previous two versions of this policy and the paragraphs for this section before I vote on this,
Okay, so for,
if that is even physically possible. I believe we have changed this, and it would be. All right, I'm gonna make a motion so we can discuss. I would like to make a motion that we, if I table, do we get to discuss? Get your card back out. I'm so sorry.
I think once it's tabled, it's tabled.
it's tabled, yeah. So,
If I made a motion to just approve the
Pronouns?
track changes, pronoun track changes, would that allow us to discuss?
Sure.
Beyond that? Okay, so I'll make that motion.
okay,
Second.
thank you. Ms.
So
Wisnick?
we have, well, very few of us are here long enough to possibly remember discussing the nepotism paragraphs. And I think, I personally feel very strongly that we need to hold on tightly to the concept of the lowest bar. We should be able to easily get over the bar of an appearance of impropriety. And I worry that these paragraphs have been changed a few times, and so I did not have time to try to go back and find in my multiple years of emails the previous versions of these. I just think that we don't want anyone to be able to throw anything at us that might quote unquote stick, right? So this idea of we're clean, we don't even have the appearance of an impropriety, and I don't feel confident in the language that's here without seeing the previous couple of iterations, because I do believe that it was very strong, and I believe we had a group of individuals at this table that maybe weakened it a little bit. And if that's the case, I would be in favor of making it strong again.
Are you making an amendment, a motion, or?
I am asking for more information for when we revisit this, because right now we're only voting on the pronouns.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table for the pronouns. One option that we can take, I'm seeing just from a practical point of view, is clean up the pronouns, bring it for a second reading for that, and to put this back in cycle for the committee of the whole.
Yes, please.
Okay, so we'll bring it forward as a pronoun correction, or as tracked, for a second reading, and the amendment would be that it not wait another 5 years to revisit. We will get it on a upcoming committee of the whole. Okay, so that's the motion on the table. The amendment to add that qualifying statement, I think, needs a vote. So, because it's not just a friendly, it's a conditional. All those in favor of amending the main motion to include the condition that we revisit? Okay, so we have a motion that's been amended. Is there any more discussion on that? All those in favor of the amended motion? 7070, okay. Thank you, Ms. Visnick. And I will take the action to find in the Wayback Machine from 10 years ago. I actually still have the hard copy. It's sitting in my office. That was my first thing before I even ran for school committee. I printed out everything and highlighted it, tabbed it, and I never let it go. Okay, that gets us through our first readings for the committee of the whole. We also have two first readings that Curriculum Instruction and Student Life Committee have brought forward to us. The first is a recommendation from the CISL Standing Committee that the attached policy EBB, Echo Bravo Bravo, first aid, be brought forward for a first reading. It will have a second reading at our regular school committee meeting on November 15th, 2023, and will require at that time a 2/3 vote. There's no action tonight unless anyone came forward with any suggested changes. This is simply our first reading.
I have a question,
Sure.
and maybe it's for Assistant Superintendent Flaherty. This track changes version looks really different than the ones we just looked at from Rachel. And so is that what you were talking about, that you think you have figured out how to make it more normal? And
Yeah.
okay,
You
awesome.
just gotta hide the bubbles before you PDF it.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Yeah, and so for those who weren't part of the CISL committee, I can't pull it up on my computer right now, but it's changing things to from school physician to Board of Health, and it is talking about student throughout, and trying to see if there's anything else. There's a couple of additional MGL references. So if nobody has prepared any amendments to that, the CISL subcommittee had recommended that we approve it, and we will do so at our November 15th. That will be your last opportunity to state any other changes. And then for the next one from CISL, this is JRA, Juliet Romeo Alpha, student records for first reading. And again, this is implementing some of those changes from system to district. It's making sure that we're talking about students, parents, and their guardians, and pronoun changes for there, fixing some grammar, and again, district, and a bunch of Mass General Law references have been added. Are there any prepared comments or statements for this first reading? We will see that again on November 15th. I'm pleasantly surprised, it's not 10. Okay. The last is just a reminder that we did move our next meeting of the regular school committee to November 15th. We have CISL at 6:30. The regular meeting will be at 7:30. And that on November 1st, we are meeting at McEwen in Dr. Flaherty's office, where our agenda now has 3 items. The first item will be, how about we do it in this order? The superintendent evaluation. Hopefully we can complete that quickly. Then we'll have our discussion about the school calendar. We have had a few different discussions at this table, and so please come with different ideas, perspectives on that topic, as we will endeavor to have it approved in February. So we should get to work on any changes or ideas that we might want to bring to the table. And then the third item will be the Resolution 7, again, bringing any ideas to the table if there's some alternative that we wish to propose the delegate bring forward.
So just in preparation for the November 1st calendar discussion, Donna is just preparing a draft as if we were going forward without making any big changes, so that you'd have an understanding of what it would look like for the 24-25 school year. Is there anything else the committee needs in preparation for that? I guess I just want to get you what you might need, because we'll be there, and I want to.
I think there are a few things, but Ms. Bisnick, I'll let you go first, and then.
I think that, yeah, he knows. Yeah, I'm looking across the table, right? Because the whole idea of do we have to use our schools as voting locations has a huge impact on our calendar. So I would like that information at that meeting if possible.
I think I could probably bring some information on maybe an inventory of available public buildings, ward by ward, and then you'd probably want me to be looking at other private possibilities, private buildings, right?
Could
And-
I ask that voter turnout information be part of that too? Because I think primary days versus, municipal versus federal versus state, I think all of those different pieces of information, if possible. I don't want to put a burden on our city clerk, who's actively getting ready for an election,
Saturday.
starting
Early
Saturday
voting
with early
starts.
voting, yes.
Yeah, let me see what I can pull together with their help for November 1, and then maybe there'll be a follow-on necessary,
Okay.
right?
And then as chair, my intention was to go through our contracts and detail the holidays that we have contractually obligated. And
We have that done for the AFSMI units, so.
for the AFSMI
Yep,
units, we
'cause
had
did-
some.
Didn't we get we had the crosswalk of holidays for the AFSMI units. Susan already did that.
Oh, good, so that saves
Susan
me some
Manzo,
time.
I'll take care of that.
You
Susan
will
Manzo, yep, Susan Manzo will
Thank
do that,
you,
yep.
thank you, thank you.
That's what I just sort of wanted to know what kind of
Yep.
documentation we want.
I think that would be helpful for our conversation. Are there other pieces of information that would be helpful for our conversation? Mayor Cahill.
Knowing what time it starts?
I
November
believe we
1st?
agreed to 7 PM and that I will ensure food is available through
Can you-
either delivery or catering.
Can you repeat the location?
McEwen
Sure,
in
okay.
Dr. Flaherty's office. It is posted as an open meeting. Generally, these are working meetings. They're not as much fun. We don't invite our BevCam friends, but we will have a meeting record created. Sorry. You can come for pizza, maybe?
I was just going to say, can Kim come and just
Yeah,
get the food?
I don't know if it's going to be pizza either, so don't get your heart set on that. We'll figure something out. Yeah, 7 o'clock. So we have 3 agenda items. First will be the superintendent's evaluation. The second will be our school calendar discussion, inclusive of contractual obligations for holidays and alternative voting options, and just a general census of what voting means when we're having school days.
And I guess I have a question. I don't know if the primary, so we have the complication of it being a presidential election in the fall, and is there a primary, like, I guess, I just need to know what election days are anticipated, but I think Donna might have already called and got it. I don't know that for
We
sure.
know there's a
but
presidential primary in March. There'll be a state primary in September.
That's the one,
And then a general in
that's the one that
November.
I was thinking about, so just knowing, and again, that's all just part of the conversation, so.
And then our third will be the resolution number 7.
So I start class on Wednesday nights very soon. That night is our first, and so I'm wondering if we can make number 3 be number 1 on the agenda, because, no offense, I just need everybody's answer. I don't need to be there, and so if I don't get to your thing on time because I'm in class, that's the
Okay.
thing I would prefer to miss.
The chair appreciates that transparency, and we'll move number 3, which will be bring something to the table, or we just do a up or down vote. And that will be number 1. Then we'll do the superintendent's evaluation based on the aggregate from everything that we supply through this weekend before Monday's October 30th deadline to Ms. Bergeron. And then third will be our calendar discussion. Okay, we'll get that posted. If there's no other dates or logistics that we need,
Motion to adjourn?
thank you, Ms. Visnick.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson.
Debate it?
It's not debatable.
I know.
All those in favor? 7. I don't even need to check the card for that. Thank you so much, BevCam. Thank you for joining us in person. Really appreciate your presence. And see you on the 1st.